Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Man, I'll tell you what, there are certain parts around the country that you have, and even Texas at times, although every day now it's just brutally hot and a little bit cooler in the mornings right now, but just wait and the weather will change. Same thing with college football. The landscape of college football is just constantly, and the word turmoil means negative at times. It's a roller coaster, the ups and downs. And today, the mother of the response or the report by John Wilner from the Mercury News that USC and UCLA are in talks, and it's just a matter of time before they join the Big Ten, which again sets off all sorts of speculation and rumors and thoughts and, oh my God, what does this mean? But you know what? That's why we're here. And that's why we love you're here with us as the chat room is already going crazy. Paul, Craig Smoke, David Smoke, Paul Catalina, all full throttle behind the scenes today with Levi, Jack, Emery, and Garrett. And just wait a day, right? Or wait till tomorrow. Who knows what it brings? But UCLA and Southern Cal trying to bring the city of LA, even if it's a pro sports town, to the Big Ten.
There are so many scenarios with this, and the Pac-12 had better hope that this move to the Big Ten or a reported move to the Big Ten is just a power play to get tiered revenue in their new TV deal, because like Texas used to have, like USC and UCLA used to have in their old TV deals before everybody kind of went to the everybody gets the same money model. The Pac-12 was structured a lot like the Big 12 used to be, where the Big 12 used to give Texas and A&M and Oklahoma more money, and the other schools kind of split all the same. The Pac-12 was tiered that way as well. The best case scenario for the Pac-12 is that that's what USC and UCLA are doing. Worst case scenario is that they're going to the Big Ten and giving the Big Ten the Los Angeles market and two brand name schools and shaking up the college football world again.
There's like 1,000 things that spawn off of this. I mean, like a 1,000 things. What happens with the Pac-12? We can just talk about the Pac-12 for an hour. And, the fact that they were feeling pretty good. George Kliavkoff, everything's going okay. New commissioner, starting to settle down a little bit. And, even John Wilner, who's a part of this story, asked him a couple weeks ago about, there's always those rumors out there about the Big 12 going after like the Arizona schools or, someone along those lines. Oregon and Washington, the rumors about them in the Big 10 that we talked about on this show months and months and months ago, actually about this time last year probably, certainly right after the Oklahoma and Texas announcement. And, as of a month ago when we talked to him, not even a month ago, that's none of that. And then, boom, shockwave today. I mean, all across college football with him reporting that and others reporting that as well. I mean, just in the last, 10 minutes of me sitting here and looking at the Twitter world, let's see here. The alliance is pretty much dead.
Oh, yeah.
The alliance is just, what was the point of that entire thing?
Slow things down, right?
To rope-a-dope the Pac-12 so the partner in the alliance can come swing and grab their best teams. You've got John Wilner saying, don't assume the Big Ten is done. And, my first question was, all right, great to be in the Big 12 right now because you are all of a sudden in a much stronger position, you would think, than you were earlier this morning before this was public, because you are a conference that is looking to get stronger. And what could possibly make you stronger when everybody's like, what's the next move? What's the next? Add UTSA. Add San Diego State. Add UNLV. How about we wait and see how everything shakes out, and maybe we add Arizona and Arizona State. Maybe we add Oregon and Washington. But if the Big Ten's not done, that's another conversation. So, I mean, like I said, there's 1,000 things that branch off of this. This will have massive ramifications. And another tweet I'll pass along was out there about the amount of money that USC and UCLA could be making, over $100 million if they join the Big Ten. Announcement, according to some, and I can't give credit for every little note because it's just a flurry of stuff, but maybe as soon as tonight, according to some reporters, that it would be official. So not done. Official announcement maybe as soon as tonight. The two LA schools joining the Big Ten could make as much as $100 million. I mean, what does the SEC do? Do they keep growing and adding? Does this mean they go swoop and grab Florida State and Clemson? I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing, and it's kind of sad in a way because this is a totally new college football that any of us grew up with. I mean, this is this is throwing all the tradition to the wayside, basically, in so many ways.
Nothing is sacred.
No, nothing's really sacred. But as we see with A&M and Texas, like, they can all come back around again if the situation's right. But just massive news, and obviously not official just yet, but it looks like it's heading that way. And once it is, then, oh boy, this is going to be a really fun show.
Paul and Craig Smoke, David Smoke, we love you. We appreciate every one of you. And I know that there's going to be all sorts of, I heard this. Try kind of be careful with that, because we try to be careful with that. We will report if it's from someone that we trust. And then, yes, there's going to be some innuendos or speculation as well. But it's interesting, about a year ago, 11 months ago, it was the Big 12 is dead. And it is, well, this is going to the Big 10, or so-and-so is going to the Pac-12, or so-and-so is now the Big 12, the Pac-12, here's a year later, they're the ones that are like, what the hell's going on? I would think that if the Big 10 was to add anybody else, in my opinion, not from calling anybody at those schools that I'm about to mention, but in my opinion, I reached out to a couple of media guys that cover a lot of these schools in both the Big 10 and Pac-12. Would you guys think if they were to add 2 more, and they may add 4, the SEC might do what Paul, Craig, you said, Washington and Oregon, to me, next team up.
No brainer. And here you go, Brett McMurphy. And I'm not going to sit here and read off Twitter all day, because we all can do that in our time.
As well, yeah.
But Brett McMurphy, just a moment ago, USC and UCLA moved to Big 10, should be completed by Friday, and Big 10 may not stop at 16. Sources tell Action Network headquarters. So again, that would lead me to believe at least that Oregon and Washington would make sense, because LA is on an island by themselves in this new Big 10. But could be done by Friday, wouldn't be done there. Second part of his tweet here, Big 12 may get aggressive. Looked at Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. We're headed to super conferences, source said. So if you are just joining the party, this is something we've been talking about for over a year now. Even with all of the especially with all the Big 12 stuff that broke about a year ago, that's when we really started to delve into this. Then obviously the Big 12 had to reorganize, and it's turned into what it's turned into. And we've been talking about all these different parts of this for months and months. And, just when it looked like it was all dying and it was starting to slow down and settle down and everybody's going to go to their corners and just play it out, massive news today.
And look, if for the super conference theory to work, it means that one conference has to die, right?
Because there's 65 what you call the Power 5, the A5 teams, including Notre Dame.
Yeah. So for that to work,
you're not going to boot some teams out. I mean, that's the thing. How much do you restrict it down to where, how low do you want to go? Do you want to have 2 conferences of 24? If the SEC and the Big 10, they're the assumed, right, Paul? They're the assumed top dogs. I've seen the people talk about, it's the NFC, AFC. We had this conversation 2 weeks ago. We called it just that, the NFC and the AFC. And if that's the direction, but I don't know. It seems like it would be kind of hard to do that. But yeah, if the Pac-12 falls apart, there's going to be the Big 12 looking to pick up scraps. There's going to be the Big 10 obviously taking teams, and you'd have to wonder not about the Big 12 because they've already made their move and could make further moves that only further solidify them. But the ACC, like I said, does the SEC come calling and go, wait a second, we got to go get Clemson and go get FSU, go get Miami? I mean, the possibilities are endless.
With all the new TV deals coming up, this also is spurned by that, right? And also the Big Ten says, you want Texas and Oklahoma, we probably can't get that, so we'll go get USC and UCLA. Maybe that's been going on for a year. There are 2 conferences that are not dissolving, for sure. We know that. The Big Ten and the SEC are only going to get bigger, better, faster, and stronger, and that's why the other 3 have to figure out a way. And yes, if you're Brett Yormark, you're like, hey, welcome to being a part of a commissioner of collegiate sports, and maybe he's already got some things up his sleeve. I don't know, but I do know this. One of the things that we will hear is a lot of, hey, I've heard, or so. Be very careful, because if we would have listened to everybody, including you and others, last year in July and August, we would not be talking about a Big 12. And so we don't know what's going to happen, but yes, nothing is sacred. It'll be kind of fun to watch.
If I'm Brett Yormark, I am licking my freaking chops. Are you kidding? I'm glad that this is how my tenure starting off. I can swoop in and maybe solidify this bad boy for the next 30 years. I mean, no, not that long, but you know what I'm saying. For the next 15 to 20, you can make the Big 12. You can solidly solidify the Big 12 as the number 3. but easily.
Look, here's what's going on right now, and this is like what people may have failed to realize is the Pac-12 and Big Ten are both in simultaneous TV negotiations.
Yep.
One of them has a lot of power. One of them is hoping to get it or hoping to improve their situation. The Big 12's not in theirs yet, which on the surface can seem like a bad thing because they've got to wait, but now because they can wait, and here's the other thing, there's a Power 5 conference that's got a grant of rights until 2036 that can't get involved in this at all. Like they can't swoop in and be like, hey, whoa, what about us? The only thing that the ACC could do, and I'm sure they maybe have like a monthly call to Notre Dame saying, you guys want to get in for football now? Do you guys want to get in for football now?
Yeah.
ACC, somebody just put that on the chat. That's a very good point. They got to be on their hands and knees right now at Notre Dame. And Notre Dame for my purposes, and this is maybe just because I haven't maybe changed with the times, I always thought if Notre Dame was to ever join a conference, it would be the Big Ten. And maybe because of where they are, but we know that now USC and UCLA being a part of the Big Ten, so regionality means nothing.
Well, it can still be if you think about it. I mean, if the Big Ten's not done, I mean, all due respect to Oregon and Washington, but Notre Dame trumps them combined. Yeah. So, if they're not done and Notre Dame sees, okay, the spots are getting limited, there could be 3 conferences and Notre Dame could walk to any of them at any time and go, we want in, and they'll go, okay, come on in. Like, it doesn't matter. Well, we got uneven amount of teams. Doesn't matter. It's Notre Dame. But, yeah, I mean, if they would be the domino if they all of a sudden spoke up and said, well, we would like a spot somewhere. Big Ten get on their knees. ACC would get on the Big 12 would get on there. I mean, anybody would.
The thing about Notre Dame is they shouldn't do that until they're absolutely made
No, they don't have to.
They don't have to.
Yeah.
But this also rings in South Bend. They're like, wait a minute, yet another little earthquake or so. Hey, how about this in college football, right? Just wait another day. Well, there's always something in the last couple of years in college sports with transfer portal, with NIL that sometimes you almost get numb to or tired of. Then you have the Texas OU story, and then you have this one, and then you have the expansion of the Big 12. And I know to me, I see a lot of this. It makes sense. Well, then they need to go get the Big 12 if they're the ones that grow. And if they're the ones that don't get poached, and right now they're in a pretty good situation. But you go Arizona schools, Utah, and Colorado. Those schools have to also want to be a part of it. And Tony Altimore's told us this, that there are maybe some political alignments and beliefs, but if they want to stay relevant and be a part of A5, they might have to change some of what they think. But we've heard that Colorado and the Arizona schools are more aligned with those like Cal and Stanford and others. At least that's what he's told.
Until the bomb goes off, right, Craig?
Yeah, that's before USC and UCLA leave. I mean, that's the flag bearer of the conference, the one that has basically saved the Pac-12, according to some of their reporters with the Lincoln Riley hire. How's that look now?
No.
How's that look? Yeah. That looks great for USC still, but that was going to be the big saving grace for the Pac-12, and all its dysfunction was going to be the rise again of USC like a phoenix. And that Phoenix is flying off to Big Ten land, it appears. But
it's not hard to see how this happened. Really.
But I mean, what I was going to get to was, the Colorado thing. Colorado's in no position of power.
No.
The Big 12 could say, we'll take your call when we're ready to take or Big 12 we'll take your call when we're ready to take your call. You were the one that left us the first time around. You are a group that we may look at. Now, I don't know how this is all going to shake out, so we don't want to speculate too much and say, well, Big 12 is going to go get this team and that team. Like, that's part of the fun, but Colorado's not first on my list. And the reason I'm phrasing it this way is you're talking about, well, maybe there's an academic Pac-12 or whatever with Cal and Stanford, and they do that. But if you're Colorado, like, what interest would you have in staying in that conference? If USC and UCLA leave, and let's say they're not done, and for kicks and giggles, it's Oregon and Washington, you're Colorado, you're looking around the room. Yeah, really, West Coast, like, you align with the West Coast, but what coast is left? I mean, really, it's the Arizona schools and a bunch of academics in Northern California. Like, how is that? I mean, maybe that's still how you feel you fit in, but that's not really a great spot.
And the smaller universities in Washington and Oregon. So, yeah I mean, those schools in Utah. Yeah, so it's interesting. The first thing I thought of was this is a really interesting TV negotiation when the Big Ten can be like, okay, we like that number, let's make a phone call. Yeah. Or USC is frustrated.
Or how about they already had made the phone call? We like that number, but what if we happen to throw in LA?
But USC is sitting there with UCLA thinking, all right, we don't like the way these negotiations are going to the Pac-12. We don't, kind of have any idea where we're going to be. Let's call and see if the Big Ten is really, we've done that. And then they go, well, what if we made this much money? And then it's just on. So,
hey, how about this? The definition of alliance, which of course was to slow down the college football expansion talk and concerns that the SEC was about to gobble up the entire country. A union or association formed for mutual benefit, especially between countries or organizations, based on affinity and interests, nature, or qualities. The state of being joined or associated. And I'm not making fun of it. It was something, it was almost like the shot across the bow that Bowlesby sent out to ESPN or in other years when college athletics has gotten a little bit haywire. The one thing about the ACC, we can look at them and you can say something. First of all, there are some damn good schools there. And they also have a TV contract that runs through 2037. And that right there is, to me, their insurance policy with ESPN. 2037. Now, does that mean they're all safe? Does that mean they can't be broken up? Nothing's sacred. But they do have an insurance policy where the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are, and especially the Pac-12 now.
Who's their primary TV partner?
ACC? It's ESPN.
ESPN.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Who they really in bed with? SEC. I think some things could be made out to work a little bit. I think there's enough money flowing. Now, you're right though, because the grant of rights is what's keeping the Big 12 with OU and Texas for
at least a year,
at least a couple more years, maybe another year, whatever. So yeah, you're talking about big price tags. I don't know what the exit would be, but the ACC is not really a part of this equation right now. It's the Pac-12. That's the story.
They're the ones that are trying to circle the wagons.
And then once we know what's actually happening there, and something official, which until it's official, then it's all just speculation. But not every domino can fall all at once. So let the Pac-12 dominoes fall where they're going to fall and then see what everybody does in response. But I think the one thing you could probably rule out is the ACC going and poaching teams, because I think now it's just so topsy-turvy that it's like, what would really be the point in that? And I don't know that their teams would all be up for them going and grabbing more teams and watering down their remaining contract. And yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this starts to crumble everything else.
And again, the ACC has a placeholder that they look down the table and, hope that one day Notre Dame walks through that door. But until Notre Dame is forced into doing that, they're not going to do it. And look, as an alum of an ACC school, if that conference were to break up, it wouldn't break my heart, And I think that they're probably fine because, again, they got the ace in the hole. But if the SEC said, well, why don't we make something out of – or the SEC, ESPN said, let's make something out of this here and form what we want to, and goes and gets the best four schools out of there, the most popular ones, North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, and Miami leaving, and making that a 10-team league. Wouldn't be the craziest thing I thought of in the world. But right now it's about the Pac-12 and how they can keep their heads above water at all if the Big Ten's just decided after a year to just crawfish on any kind of deal and go, no, that was just last year so we could figure out what the SEC's plan was. Now that you've served your purpose to us, we will cannibalize you.
We have Max Olson, athletic.com, college football writer. We hope to have him today. Normally he's at 4. We have him at 4:30. No Mickey today. Craig's off the radar. Paul's top 5 is normal. Sam Siegelman of On3Sports.com on the Elite 11 camp, and we have news on that as well. And sports law attorney Dan Lust is going to join us today on many things. It could have been Deshaun Watson. Again, now we can even get into him with that as well. So we told you about USC and UCLA. Before we get too far down the road, Baylor got a commitment today from Calvin Clements out of Kansas, who his wish list was Iowa State, Baylor, Minnesota, Oklahoma State, and Nebraska. Austin Novosad is right now second as they enter the final day of the Elite 11. Baylor commit Austin Novosad, and the Oklahoma Arnold from Denton Guyer High School right now is at number 1. There's a couple of NBA notes, including Baylor's Royce O'Neal at Utah has been traded or is going to be traded to Brooklyn, free agency in the NBA, including Kevin Durant demanding a trade.
And he'll get to see Kevin Durant's old locker.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with Off the Radar, because this is I'd much rather talk about college football stuff than random stuff elsewhere. So by the time we roll around to 4:45, we'll see where we are, but I might just make Off the Radar everything that we're already talking about, because I'm way more interested in that.
Hey, behind me, can you give us to my right, over my right shoulder, there's a football, and to the right of the football, to the left is the Cincinnati helmet. Steve Shook, thank you. Sent us the Cincinnati Bearcats mini helmet as it now joins our background on 365 Sports
and
on
if
YouTube.
You're Cincinnati and you're BYU and you're Houston and you're UCF. Welcome, Big 12. New brethren, and just in time, huh? I mean, look at them getting into the Big 12 at the time that they did. What looked like it was going to be the total downfall of a conference, thanks to Texas and Oklahoma. And their actions, behind the scenes and in the dark of night. I mean, they had to do what they had to do for themselves, and not gonna break that down at all. I mean, they're set for life, but it did open the door for those 4 schools to get this opportunity. And now look where they are. I mean, now they're in the Big 12 securely starting next year, and they may have some new company that's going to be joining them as well, depending on how all this goes, but certainly in a much better spot than some of those. I mean, if you're in the Pac-12 right now, if you're like lower end of the Pac-12, you got to be looking around going, oh, crap. Like, if this happens, I mean, what do we – I mean, all of a sudden you're looking around the room, and there's not a lot of people left in there, just like with the schools last year in the Big 12 when Texas and Oklahoma announced, like,
yep, absolutely.
Whoa, what's going on here? So,
and that's when you heard so-and-so's going here and so-and-so. Everyone
Kansas
stayed the
to
same.
the Big Ten.
And if you are UCF and Cincinnati, Houston, and Brigham Young, even though you got to still kind of wait what's going on here, you got in under the deadline. And now can the Big 12, can Brett Yormark do something with what's available or what is available, and also, of course, going further into what is going to be new TV contracts. Man, right now the chat room is going so fast and furious. 1,032 of you right now. Thank you for being a part of what we're doing. That doesn't include the online and or all of you on the text line as well. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. It is just wait a while, right? Think about in the last 2 years how college athletics has been shaken to its core, and in some ways great, and in some ways traumatic. Depends on where you are. But it's going to be interesting to see how everybody continues to kind of go and watch what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I absolutely, would it be great? Would it be great if the Big 12 could add somebody out of the Pac-12? If you wanted to add your 2 of Washington and Oregon, they may already be looking into the Big 10. We don't know that. And who knows, maybe the Pac-12 tries to pull off a miracle and expand their own conference despite losing USC and UCLA if they can hold on to anybody else. It will be so much fun to watch. We just got a chat room super chat for $19.99 and $9.99. Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Yeah, no doubt. Shout out to whoever sent that. Do appreciate that. What you just said there is really interesting, because when the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma on paper, even though, again, they're around for at least this year, probably next year, and who knows after that, maybe another year after that. But what is the Big 12 going to do? Oh, they're dead. They're screwed. They're ducks in the water. I mean, they're done. Oh, they're going to go get Cincinnati and BYU and UCF and Houston? How's that going to work? Well, it hasn't started yet, but it seems like it's going to work out pretty okay. And my question is okay, well, how do you do that with the Pac-12? Because you just mentioned maybe the Pac-12 goes and grabs somebody. Well, congratulations, San Diego State and Boise State and UNLV and everybody who's been mentioned to us by their fan bases that should have been Big 12 candidates for the last year. Everybody's been screaming about the Broncos and the Aztecs and all those teams. Well, maybe this is your opening into the Pac-12. Was the Pac-12 going to stop being so damn snooty? I mean, where did that get them ultimately? Right? We'd never take Baylor and TCU. We're not taking any religious schools. We're not taking any measly, Big 12 teams. Well, man, something about burnt bridges and things like that. I don't know.
Pick up the phone first.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the one thing I keep thinking about Stanford is, since they have their gigantic endowment and everything that they could do, is just go independent. Just like, you can be good in every sport and play whoever you want, essentially, and not have to worry about.
Somebody brought that up in the chat room, Paul. I'm glad you said that.
Just go independent.
From 308, if Notre Dame joins the ACC, and again, that's if, Doesn't that open contract to renegotiate the ACC grant of rights, like Clemson or Florida State then could also find a loophole? I don't know about the legalities of that. I'm not going to act like, but it's an interesting question. I appreciate that, or even a comment.
The loophole would have to be ESPN making it all right for those ACC schools.
Or making it right for themselves.
Well, but I mean, it's going to be. I mean, it would be mutually beneficial, but they'd have to say, like, look, don't worry about a 13-year grant of rights. And here, people may not realize this. Like, look, they might have big alums in a lot of places, but Florida State's got a big name. They're not sitting on University of Texas money where they can just be like, here you go.
There are like 3 piles of University of Texas money, and UT's on one of those piles, and that's about it.
Also, we're talking about the NFC AFC thing. I know we need to take our first break here in a second, but just saw David Hale put this out there, and this is going back to that NFC AFC thing. Even at just 16 teams each, I think you can make a pretty good argument today. The Big Ten and SEC don't have much of a need for the NCAA anymore. We're talking about next dominoes to fall. I can't help but think the NCAA might be one of them. And, he's right. I mean, you could see those 2 teams setting it up. I think that, obviously with the Big Ten going and grabbing West Coast schools, that does give you more of that geography and that reach where you already have like kind of the North and the Midwest locked down with the Big Ten. You got the whole, Southeast and now some of the Southwest with the additions of Oklahoma and Texas. I don't know. It seems like there's like some people that have been in a room really having some meetings that we are all not aware of because that does make a lot of sense. And, the only thing is that leaves a lot of really quality programs out by themselves if you were to just take those 2. But in theory, you could do that and have it be an NFC, AFC type of thing. I don't know that I see the great picture in that all the way because, again, you're leaving out a lot of really good institutions by doing so. And I think that would also lead to where you have absolutely no argument about the payment of players and employees and all of that. But if you're making so much money where all of a sudden you're USC making $100 million a year because you're in the Big Ten, well, maybe the payment of players like their employees isn't as much of a big deal anymore because you're making $100 million freaking dollars just off your TV contract. So, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms that stems from this. But I will say, yesterday the new Big 12 commissioner was announced, and I read more about him last night, and I feel better about it. I'm still a little bit curious, but this totally throws that for just a whole different loop now because the landscape has dramatically changed in 24 hours. Just incredible, and the questions are endless, and glad everybody who loves college football, even if they're a little mad at it right now, are all here with us and as interested as we are in all this.
All right. Dan Luss, scheduled to be a part of the show, and a pretty damn good day to have him any day because of what he does and what he can help break down for us and the legal stuff in sports, and even today's news with USC and UCLA and the Big Ten and what happens after that. Dan, thanks for your time. There's so much to get to, but your thoughts yourself as a sports guy, just USC and UCLA and the Big Ten, the start of what could be 2 massive conferences or whatever is next.
Well, what's funny is that I guess we should have predicted this, or at least some form of the Big Ten trying to play catch-up after, obviously, Texas and Oklahoma moved last year. I was kind of maybe there weren't that many, but I was thinking maybe, right, a school like Baylor or a school like Kansas would be pretty attractive to the Big Ten, right? You guys, Baylor had just won the national championship in basketball. Kansas, a blue, but obviously ended up winning the championship this year. But I was pretty, public that I think it's an arms race. So, what happened after that? We had this alliance between the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big Ten. And, for better or for worse, there was quiet. And as has been well reported, no contract that bound any of these conferences in the alliance. So fast forward, right? Kansas, Baylor, those guys stay put. And what do you know? There was a little bit of a civil war amongst the alliance because 2 blue bloods, Pac-12 obviously loses USC and UCLA. So maybe you could have predicted it, but how Bob Bowlesby kind of, solidified the conference, number 1, and then this alliance, number 2, maybe people were thrown off the scent. So Big Ten striking when people maybe least expected it.
Dan, I guess as an attorney, there are lessons you can tell to people. Like if you get arrested, don't talk until your attorney is there. And 2, always have a contract, right? This may be a lesson for that.
Yes, and I think so. I mean, people were making fun of the alliance last year, like, oh, this is just worthy of a handshake. I mean, it's in theory billions of dollars that could be exchanging if you guys violate this so-called unwritten alliance, and that's exactly what we have here. So I've gotten the people in my DMs, hey, is there any legal liability between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten? in theory, there's always something we call tortious interference with the contract. If the Big Ten could be potentially accused of violating Pac-10s or Pac-12 conferences, their television contracts, certainly that's possible. But it happens so often in college football, and we never have anything like that. But if you guys remember back in the Big 12 saga with Bob Bowlesby, he accused ESPN of this tortious interference with the contract, helping schools try to leave the conference. So, yeah, that's certainly on the table, but a much easier way to sue if there had been some type of contract and some type of agreement between the ACC, Pac-12, and Big Ten not to steal each other's schools, but not in writing. So a little bit less likely we're going to have a lawsuit here.
Dan, if you're not one of the two schools being mentioned, and as many have said out there, reported out there already, that the Big Ten might not be done. So let's assume there's a couple more that are in negotiations as well. So if you're one of those schools that's not, you're completely blindsided the same way that TCU and Baylor and the Big 12 schools were. What is your first phone call as far as like legal advice and all that? What is the first thing you think those schools are doing right now?
I think what's probably more interesting is the calls that they're getting, right? They're probably getting calls from the commissioner to check in with them to see if, Kliavkov over in the Pac-12 and maybe, whatever. I think, I don't know. We'll see. Even Greg Sankey, right? Can you imagine the fireworks here? If the Big Ten could pull someone away from the SEC, as unlikely as that is. So I think any of the Power 5 schools, they're being very mindful. I'm sure they're scheduling meetings as we speak to check everyone's temperature and to see if maybe, right, there's some type of way they can keep those schools on board. And if there is potentially a school that was complaining about something or complaining about any outstanding issues, now it's time for the commissioners to do their job. They're paid very high salaries to try to protect the assets, to protect the schools within the conference. So, if you are not receiving calls, maybe it's your time to make a call to the commissioner if you need some TLC.
Dan, in this day and age, have you ever seen so much that is testing the legal system as we see now across the board?
Well, it's an interesting era right now. I mean, conference realignment has happened before, nothing new, but the NIL era definitely adds another level of insanity to all this because, what are we seeing? I mean, these are all moves to try to create super conferences to try to attract the best talent in the country. And, short of paying someone a very high number, the NIL process, which, again, it's kind of a murky waters, what you're allowed to do when you cross the line. We don't know because there hasn't been any type of enforcement from the NCAA or state attorney general. So in the middle of all this, you have the conferences saying, you know what, let's build the superpowers here. So, chasing those big television dollars. I will say that one thing that we should be looking forward to on this scale, and maybe this is part of it, I can't tell you exactly why, but we're going to have a debate at some point in college sports. The more these athletes start to look like professional athletes, the more, right, that some court in our country, and there's certainly courts that are dealing with this issue now, they haven't gone all the way up to the highest courts, but we're going to have this conversation. Are athletes, college athletes, are they employees? And, at our professional level, certainly baseball players, football players, basketball players, they get a piece of the television pie. That's something that's done through collective bargaining. And I don't know, maybe the bigger these television deals get when you add schools like Texas and Oklahoma and USC and UCLA, the more you're going to have athletes underneath those roofs within those conferences saying, man, I mean, they're making money off of my name, image, and likeness. What happened to name, image, and likeness rights? Maybe I should be getting a piece of it. So, obviously these two conversations are happening hand in hand. So you got to be paying attention to the whole landscape.
Dan, what does collectively bargaining, I mean, not to say it's easier in the professional leagues, but you do have more of a nice round number of union members in that. In college athletics, it's a lot more union members. It's a lot bigger union. So what would that look like, collectively bargaining and becoming a union of college athletes?
I think the part that maybe people underestimate, and I think maybe guys a year ago I was warning you that this could be coming down the pike, and we're getting a little bit closer as we speak, but you don't have to collectively, you get to pick the group that you want to bargain with, right? For all intents and purposes, it could be, right, Baylor football. It doesn't have to be all Baylor athletes because if you're a football player, you're looking around and Baylor basketball as well. Those are the two revenue generating sports, football and basketball, largely throughout the country. So, it doesn't have to be as big as, encompassing every single sport because at the end of the day, let's say you want a piece of that football contract. I'm not necessarily sure why, if you're a parent of a Baylor football player, why you'd want someone from the Baylor swimming team, to be involved in that conversation. So, if and when we do get there, which isn't particularly close, I'm just saying it's making its way up. It's going to take a school and some athletes to challenge it. But yeah, you could have definitely lines divided across sports, different unions for different sports. It's a very complicated landscape that, unfortunately, we're not here yet. And hopefully the NIL era shakes itself out a little bit before we get to this employee conversation.
Dan, I wanted to ask you a non-college football question since we have you on. I'm sure, and I saw your Twitter feed, you saw the latest on Freddie Freeman and his former agent, Casey Close, who's now come out with a statement who's saying that Doug Gottlieb's comments about what went down were totally false, and now he's seeking perhaps, pursuing some charges or whatever he's going to do, but threatening to respond. What do you make of the whole situation with Freddie Freeman and now his former agent and Casey Close?
So it's in the developing story by the minute. ESPN has a report. I think Excel Sports Management released a statement. I was curious where Doug Gottlieb got that from. He was the only one reporting it, and I don't, he's not a Jeff Passan or a Buster Olney, someone that's usually tied into baseball in particular. So a report came out maybe about, half an hour, guys, from Excel Sports Management. It seems that Casey Close is accusing Braves management of being the ones that leaked that story to Doug Gottlieb, if you just want to read between the lines. So, now you have a whole other element to this. Obviously there could be potential arbitration in that matter if he wants to file a claim against Casey Close. Freddie Freeman can say, hey, you cost me my legacy in Atlanta. You didn't tell me about this final offer again, assuming, those alleged reports are true from Doug Gottlieb. Then the other part of it, which I'm following, as a little lawyer in me, Doug Gottlieb is being accused of making this thing up. So Casey Close is trying to say Doug Gottlieb made it up. It's inaccurate. And now his new report is almost saying the Braves are mischaracterizing it. So Casey Close seems to, he's almost in damage control mode. So, people can threaten defamation a lot, but to win a defamation case against a public figure like Casey Close, you'll have to show that those entities knew what they were saying is false, but they said it anyway. It's this concept called actual malice, which, I don't know, if Doug Gottlieb was told that by Atlanta, he doesn't know it to be false. He heard it from Atlanta. So Atlanta, right, that seems to be the one now that Casey Close is directing his anger towards, that if they really made this thing up, his reputation has been harmed, right, to some extent. So maybe those are Atlanta, those lawyers over with the Braves are now kind of getting their P's and Q's together.
Dan, Deshaun Watson, NFL, that hearing, the NFL, the reports are, and from reputable people, that they want at least a year. What do you think is going to happen here? Is Deshaun Watson's side going to take the NFL to court and look at other previous rulings, or maybe even get in the dirt with them?
It's tough to say, right? I think we should point out for the Deshaun Watson, scenario, it's kind of unprecedented one way or the other. There's never been an athlete in professional sports, let alone football, that has 20 accusers accusing him of something like this. Just the numbers are staggering. So it's tough for either side to say that the judge, if they decide, right, potentially 0 games for Watson or a year suspension. There's also talk of potentially an indefinite suspension, that Watson's going to be out as long as the NFL wants him to be. But, in terms of an appeal, taking this to a higher court, right, there's no precedent to look back on. If there's any precedent, maybe it's a little controversial what I'm about to say, but the Robert Kraft scenario from a couple years ago, when he was accused of some type of misconduct at a massage parlor, whatever you want to call it, he didn't receive any type of discipline, as far as I'm aware, from the NFL at all. So if there's any precedent that seems kind of similar, Watson's going to point it out and say, listen, last time this happened, it was with an owner who got 0, and according to the NFL's personal conduct policy, owners are supposed to be held to the same personal conduct issues as players are. Yet he was punished for nothing. So if we're really holding to precedent, here's a scenario where someone was, mixed up in a potential massage scenario. It wasn't anything non-consensual with Kraft, but 0 games were issued. So nothing in the personal conduct policy requires some type of crime, some type of criminal charges, or to be found liable by a civil jury. It's just optics, and certainly the optics are bad either way. Yet no owner has been punished for anything like this.
Dan, do you think that Rusty Hardin still sticks with the legal argument of it's not technically illegal to ask for a happy ending?
I think he definitely wants those comments back. We have not heard that argument come up since that ill-fated trip to, I think it was Houston Sports Radio. Yeah, the comments that will go down in history. It's not necessarily illegal to get a happy ending. I don't know what possessed Rusty Hardin to make that argument.
To deflect, I don't know. Dan, sportsman, I'm telling you, it is a crazy time. What a great time for you. You've been amazing at Sports Law Lust, by the way, on Twitter. It's a fantastic feed, plus what he does, Condetrimental as well. Could you have picked a better time to kind of vault out in front of people the way you did? I don't know exactly when it all started, but in recent years?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, I was in the middle of doing our podcast today, covering the Freddie Freeman stuff, covering baseball arbitration. And in the middle of the podcast, right, this USC UCLA news breaks, obviously some breach of contract issues. And then, the topic that we didn't discuss here, Kevin Durant, formerly of University of Texas, he demands a trade out of Brooklyn. So, when you look closely enough, there is usually a legal story to every sports scenario. There's always going to be lawyers involved in some way, shape, or form. And in our show, Conduct Detrimental, we try to bring out the lighter side and just talk as if we were at a sports bar, but we were talking about the legal concept. So, we have a lot of fun with it, and I take great pride in trying to break these issues down in a digestible way for sports fans. Because at the end of the day, I'm kind of a sports fan first, lawyer second. So it comes with the territory.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your time. Craig, anything else for Dan, Paul? All right, thank you, Dan. Appreciate your time. Dan Lust, sports law attorney. It's a great feed at Sports Law Lust on Twitter, and he has a podcast, and he does an amazing job.
The podcast is Conduct Detrimental. You called it Condetrimental. That's just the Twitter tag.
And also, one thing on the chat room. Here's our first of all, the story, USC, UCLA. There's three things going on. Those who are fans of whatever's left of the Pac-12, those who are fans of the ACC, and fans of the Big 12. And it's amazing. It's like 33%, 33%, 30%. Which one is up for grabs next, or which one's the weakest? Why do you? I love it, but we don't know. And I get the speculation of who's going to go where and who's going to get rated and all that. And the Big 12, for whatever reason, they're like a cat with 9 lives. 2010, they lose 2 teams. Then it's all of a sudden A&M and Missouri. And there was a lot of rumors even before that. And then they lose Texas and Oklahoma. And here they are. And imagine where we were a year ago, and imagine where we are now. And by the end of the month, God knows, or heck, it is the end of the month today, right?
Yes.
Where we might be. As it's fun to see. It'll be fun to watch who ends up joining the Big Ten, anything else with the SEC, and, of course, who survives. And on top of that, you know that thing about having your own national championship? Well, the more teams you add to the mix, the more it can be legitimate. But I still think you're going to have to end up with 48 to 65 teams or so still a part of it to be a legitimate, overall, whatever you want to call it, national championship that's validated. And I'm just throwing out there, you have polls to do. We want to hear from you, 254-339-1122. Stanford as an independent makes sense. Even Cal as an independent, would you not think makes sense? And I still think Oregon and Washington will be a part of the attachment to the Big Ten, and then possibly we would think Stanford and Cal have to be a part of that discussion too.
Yeah, I think about, last year when we were trying to figure out if the Big 12 was going to collapse, like where everybody kind of fit in. The ones you don't really fit in anywhere would be the Oregon State and Washington State, because they're kind of out there, and they're not very big schools and all that, but they, there's, you never know what's going to happen. It was kind of like where you put Kansas State and Iowa State if the Big Ten didn't want them, and those kind of theories that were out there last year. But yeah, the Big 12 has options. Like everybody has options. The Pac-12 seems to have less and less. And if Washington and Oregon pick up the phone today and ask USC who their contact is at the Big Ten and say we'd like to get on this, I don't see the Big Ten turning them down.
Guys, those calls have already been made. Exactly. Look at today. I mean, Alliance what? What was the Alliance? Well, the alliance was being made. People who were helping make the alliance were crafting the plans for today.
Just like
the Big 12. Yeah. So, that's all already going on. I don't think that, Washington woke up today and was like, well, wait a second, what? I think those calls and those conversations much like with OU and Texas's people and whoever they were dealing with in the SEC, I think those are, how long? My question is, how long have they been going on? How many meetings have happened in the Pac-12 where people have shook hands and smiled and said, hey, the future's bright, and just were lying to each other the entire time? Because that's what was happening in the Big 12. But, yeah, man, the departure from just a year ago and the feeling the Big 12 had, they've basically just taken it, moved it, and placed it on the shoulders of the Pac-12. And now the Pac-12, I would love to have cared enough to have identified maybe the most obnoxious Pac-12 fan during the Big 12's struggle there. Who really went out of their way to be like a D-head about it and talk about the conference dying of all that. Where's that guy today? Where is that guy's Twitter? I want to see that Twitter, because shoes on the other foot, buddy. I see there was a count a second ago talking about, this big mutated conference of the Big 12 Pac whatever conference. The Big 12, if you're the Big 12 right now, you're somebody who's got, a lot more bargaining power all of a sudden, but you get to pick and choose who you really want to bargain with. A lot depends on what the Big Ten may also still be taking and what the SEC might also be involved in taking, because I definitely believe that they're not sitting on their hands. I'm sure they've got a chess move that's two, moves down that we're not even thinking of just yet, because all these have clearly been talked about and were going on. And so we thought it was done. I saw Stuart Mandel make this comment of, he had a recent tweet, last year's Texas OU bombshell wound up having minimal ripple effects. Today's USC UCLA shocker feels more like the dam just broke. It's a Big Ten SEC world now. What are you talking about? The ripple effects are still being felt from Texas and Oklahoma. That's what started the ripple to begin with.
This is a reaction to it, yeah.
What are you talking about? Minimal effects? Minimal effects, how many conferences just completely changed over? They're just not the conferences that you choose to cover. They're not the big conferences, but look underneath the Power 5. How much changeover was there as a result of the Big 12? A freaking ton, man. A freaking ton. And now you have a move like today. This move wasn't just out of the blue. This move's, absolutely just a following chapter to what happened last summer, a year later. So, I don't know. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's still the ripples being effect from the big bomb that was dropped last year when Brett Zorneman decided to just shake the entire college football world, awake or what. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, what that was, that reaction to Brett Zorneman's report. But that same feeling's being felt today, that's for sure.
Well, we appreciate you. Nearly 1,500 at one point was we were having you on, viewing what we do at 365 Sports. And this is one that I think there's maybe a little bit of this in all of us. And even if you are one of the megas, the logos, the blue bloods that are getting bigger, better, faster, stronger, and richer, really getting tired of the college scene and all of its issues. I'm not saying you should feel that way. This is from David Warburton. And David, thank you for the chat. One of the things that it does seem like it's like the rearranging of the Titanic, and then all of a sudden it leans another direction, right? It's almost like college sports in general is not going to sink. The NCAA is dead in the water. They are. And now it's almost refreshing in a way, and yet it's also a little bit scary. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of this, where are we going to end up, or what else is going to happen, and really what will be the changes, and I'm okay with it.
I think the scary part, though, is that there is an end to this somewhere, and it doesn't end well for everyone. So that's what I think people are scared about, but it's going to continue rippling, and the reason that it's not just going to be simple is that there are people out there who are going to keep fighting for their spot because you don't want to lose it. So, but there's still, there's just so many different layers to this. Of the Pac-12 caught itself in an expiring television contract, and it put them really vulnerable. Like, one of the things looking back that at least the Big 12 had was they had 3 or 4 years left on their deal, television-wise, when this all went down, that they could fall back on. The Pac-12 is in the middle of renegotiating their deal, which is up after next year. So they don't have that to fall back on right now as many years. So they're definitely way more in scramble mode than the Big 12 was last year.
What was David's comment? You never mentioned David's comment. You just mentioned that he had a comment.
Oh, damn. I'm sorry. Let me see if I still have it highlighted. I was basically just he's tired of all the collegiate athlete, all the issues that are going on in college sports right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are, and I think that's something you got to be careful with if you're, college officials. But clearly, they see it differently. Clearly, they don't really. I mean, it's become abundantly obvious they don't care about schools that aren't going to bring them a bang for their buck. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of care right now for the schools that aren't flagships. Or a part of, some major grand plan that's going on. And if you're new, then you don't realize this, but people that have been with us for a while now, I've been screaming that from the hilltops about just the state of college football. And anytime you raise any sort of level of concern, you have some yahoo who wants to go, oh, well, you don't care about the players. Or, oh, you don't want players to get paid. And it's like, no, I would like some structure. Oh, well, you don't believe in NIL. So there's always that idiot you got to drown out. But been saying, this is not leading to a clear picture of college sports. This is leading to college sports not really being college sports and just being minor league pro sports is what it's leading to.
Know about minor league either.
And you see people arguing about, well, just they'll license the brands. Well, then what is the point of that? What? You're not a Michigan State fan most of the time because you're looking for a pro team to root for. You have a Michigan tie or you went to Michigan State. You have something there. Maybe it's just a team you saw on TV and it made you love college football, but this whole idea of making it pro and stripping away what makes it unique and special, I think is just why? Just all for the sake of money. And then again, this is America. So yeah, I guess for a lot of people, $100 million is not enough. They need $200 million. And if a few schools die off football wise because of that, oh, well, at least we're richer. And that sucks, man. But that's also the way of this world, at least. And, I don't want to go too alarmist here, but yeah, if you're one of those smaller schools, just like some Big 12 schools a year ago had to go, holy crap, what is our entire future now? There's a lot of schools feeling that way, and it sucks, and we know that feeling.
Here's the chat of the day, and Woody, you just took my entire soul and just grabbed it out of my heart because of what you said. But at the same time, thank you for what you say. You guys do a great job, like your show. I'm an OU fan, but Baylor's a good university. The old man does have a Biden moment at times. Paul, would he kill me? Just take me now.
Look,
no, he's right.
Did you not stab yourself in the hand last week?
Yeah, I do, and it's still.
That's kind of like falling off your bike.
But yeah, I do.
It's like falling off your bike while you're not riding the bike.
This is not all there anymore. It's just the way it is. The Wild Wild West Super Conferences. Golly, by the time I even go to read it, it's gone because the chat room is going crazy. But we appreciate it. I was going to try to find where it said college sports never been about college sports. It's always been about the money.
Yes and no. I think that, yeah, mostly you're correct in that. And I'm not saying for one single second that, this wasn't a long time coming or a rude awakening that was needed. But I think when you're talking about the bigger schools, then, yeah, that's even more true. But, man, not every school out there is making money. Not every AD out there is making $1 million+. There's a lot, the majority, in fact, that are losing money, that aren't making $1 million, and that are having to go play and get their heads kicked in by Alabama, some weekend in September for a measly $1 million to keep their program floating. So it's not all about the money for a lot of the people involved in college sports. And quite frankly, if all these schools were to break away and do the NFC, AFC, NFL wannabe thing that, I guess would be a glorified, minor league or whatever, there will still be some college sports. It will just be wildly different from this, colored waterfalls and Mercedes for every quarterback and, all this other stuff that some of these big schools are doing. There are people in college athletics who really do truly believe, and it's not just lip service, in the academic part and the life part of college athletics. And there will be some people that keep that alive. It just may not get as much attention on ESPN, but it will be kept alive by some people, and it needs to be, because that is still important in the long run. It's not all about money, even though that's what everything's about in the long run.
Craig, and I think an important distinction to make is, why do most college athletic departments lose money? Because it was not set up to make money from the beginning. So from the beginning it's not like they started an airline and they were trying to make money by having more flights. Like, college athletics from its inception, which is a long time ago, was not set up to make money. It was not a for-profit thing. Then all of a sudden it started to, and everybody's trying to figure out how to get in on the game. But there are schools even within the big power conferences that, even though they get that big check, it's not really.
You brought that up yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah,
Phil says, should schools lose their nonprofit status?
Well, I mean, the problem is that there's not that many that are for profit. Even like I'm saying, there's schools in the Big Ten and the SEC that have this big television money coming in that still doesn't technically make them in the black, like everybody else is.
Hayden on the chat says that San Diego State gets an invite to the Pac-12 within the next 5 years. Hayden, and I know you've been going back and forth about the Big 12 football this season. That's been great, but we don't know what the hell is going to be going on. And if there is even a Pac-12 in 5 years, or what will be of college football at that particular time?
None of us, I'll say this, Hayden, and I know there's a rabid fan base for San Diego State out there. We've heard all the arguments, the stadium and all of that, the location for why they should be in the Big 12, and we've talked about that quite a bit. But who had today predicted? I mean, who had USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten? I mean, we definitely talked about it over the last year and multiple times. Just the grand idea and possibility of even with the alliance. If you remember, I brought this up more than a few times about the Pac-12 move and all of that, and it was months and months ago, and just felt like it kind of died off. But nobody saw OU in Texas coming. Nobody saw today coming. So, I mean, if you can predict that, I mean, kudos to you. But, I mean, I have no idea, because if tonight all of a sudden we hear that Oregon and Washington are on their way to the Big Ten, then what is the Pac-12? I mean, what is it at that point? Are they going to even have a conference to invite San Diego State to? And, and if there's not some massive move, I mean, maybe even Oregon, Washington, or some other combination, ends up in the Big Ten by the end of Friday. Maybe the Pac-12, just like everybody was. I'm not going to, as somebody who was covering the Big 12 and heard everybody writing them off, they're dead, they're screwed, bye Baylor, bye Oklahoma State, bye everybody, Kansas is going to the Big Ten, all that was wrong. So I'm not going to sit here and say the Pac-12's for sure dead, but because they could always go, the San Diego State, the Armed Service Academy route, and do all of that and scoop up what they can, Boise State. But, man, with a TV contract lingering very soon and one that's coming up before the Big 12, this is disastrous news today for them. I mean, could not be worse.
The Big 12 had more of a cushion to fall on, and the Pac-12 doesn't.
First choice.
Yeah, exactly. And the Pac-12 doesn't.
Max Olson, go-to senior editor and college football writer for theathletic.com, covers college football. Max, just wait a day, and what the hell happens next?
Fellas, I really do not have time for this, so let's get through
it. Yeah, well, and I was expecting, I really was like, hey, so Max, what, in your opinion, what's?
I'm just messing with you. It's just, hey, one of those days, right?
Yeah,
you can't. I'm one of those people that's not very good about taking vacation, and I really want to, like, next year, I need to just go out of the country for a month and just come back and, not even just worry about this stuff.
Every time Mac Rhodes takes a vacation, all hell breaks loose in certain ways, whether it's a story involving Dale or whatever. Max, what's next? What is next other than UCLA and USC, in your opinion?
Yeah, man, where to begin? I think obviously you probably start with the Big Ten and just say, are they done? Or what's the sort of immediate end game for them? Is it, making them run at Notre Dame? Is it trying to add, Oregon and Washington or more Pac-12 members? Is it, do they see, schools in the Big 12 as potential targets? So you really don't know, what's the number the Big Ten's trying to get to here? And then certainly, what's the SEC response to this? Is the SEC now more interested in making moves themselves? But, there's sort of that larger picture of, obviously you see a lot of people speculating about, really where is this whole thing headed, really, between these two conferences that are going to be making just insane money here on their TV deals. But I do think this is an opportunity that the Big 12, needs to embrace, and it's not ideal timing, obviously, to, go through a commissioner transition right now is really not great. But this is the chance for the Big 12 to play offense and to go add. To go take some of these Pac-12 schools, and I think if they did that, it sort of checks all the boxes for the Big 12 in terms of strengthening their position. And but you certainly wonder, are they actually in a position right now to go do those things?
So does Brett Yormark pretty much have one job when he gets there, is get 4 more schools?
I mean, Brett Yormark's first job is moving up his start date, because I don't think he can wait till August 1.
It's a great point.
I think that I that's where, you in hindsight, you'd say, did Lawrence Kuvanek and the Big 12 board make the right call in April by saying now's the right time to move on from Bob Bowlesby, when obviously he was willing to see this thing through here for a few more years. So certainly they moved the search process along as fast as they could. But now Brett Yormark is in this position that George Kliavkoff was kind of in last summer, where, okay, you just got here, you're just getting settled in. There's a lot you kind of don't know still about this league. There's a lot to learn here over the next year. Are you ready to make really defining long-term decisions right now about expansion? I think that's the big question mark there. And he probably will need Bob Bowlesby as a consultant on all of this stuff if they're going to go in that direction. But, certainly the Big 12 has an opportunity here. And I don't doubt that, I think Arizona State is a popular place to start that discussion. I wonder if it makes even more sense to talk about, adding Colorado and Utah to that conversation. But, certainly the question is, can the Big 12 board, can they build consensus and get moving in that direction if they think that's the thing to do? Obviously, last summer you saw when the Pac-12 ironically decided not to expand, Bob Bowlesby was able to capitalize on that moment and build consensus and momentum to go very quickly add the 4 new members. So, can the Big 12 do that again while they, bring in a new boss?
Max, what was your favorite memory or moment from the Alliance?
It wasn't even really like around long enough to print out merch and stuff, right? Like, I wish there was a T-shirt you could buy. I think it was so we all remember the Zoom press conference they had with like the Photoshop background they made of the 3 conferences. I think it was really that moment that day when we all understood like where how this was going to go, when they were like, no, we didn't sign anything. We looked each other in the eyes. We shook hands. We trust each other. I think when you knew that there was nothing actually in writing about what they were doing to work together, you knew someday there were probably someday somebody was eventually going to have to stab somebody in the back, and to see it happen within a year is it's pretty wild.
That's going to be one of the more fascinating parts of whatever books are written about this time period, of all the negotiations that have gone on in the dark over the last year, and probably even farther back than that. When you just think about Oklahoma and Texas, and clearly some schools involved in the Alliance were doing the same thing while forming the Alliance. But Max, we were just talking about a second ago. Do you think Lincoln Riley had any idea of the long-term plans when he joined USC?
Freaking 2 times in 12 months, guys. Like, is someone going to run these things by Lincoln Riley when he's making... I have to wonder. Yeah, I really have to wonder. Sort of when did USC know they were doing this and all that? It's so interesting. It really is. And they just had their number 2 at their athletic department. He just left basically to go join the Detroit Lions. So I wonder if he knew this was coming and they got this done before he left or whatever. But I'm sure Lincoln Riley probably had more of a heads up this time. Probably not in December when he took the job. Who knows? But man, like that it really is wild. You guys remember, like when this move happened, and he made that decision, it was hailed as, this is, incredible for the future of the Pac-12. This guy's going to save the Pac-12, and he's not going to be in it very long.
Max, technically the Alliance didn't lie. The Big Ten was going to schedule some games with USC and UCLA just in their own conference.
Well, yeah. So there's going to be the scheduling piece of that. It's going to be pretty funny to see, how do they work out the time zone issue that they suddenly have? Who's going to be playing the 9 a.m. games basically. And, how many times do, USC and UCLA have to go out to Rutgers and Maryland and stuff like that. There's definitely that part of it. But honestly, guys, the thing that's kind of a bummer is, obviously the geography part of this, that's been out the window for quite a while, right? But that there's still a part of that, I don't know. Does it bum you guys out at all, the idea that we're just sort of, continuing to kind of bastardize this in terms of the local and regional rivalries.
For
stuff
sure.
like that.
For sure,
It's been that way for a while, but it's now in warp speed.
But complaining about it, you get just drowned out by, well, you don't want players to get money and stuff. Just these random cries of, you don't care about this or that. And it's like, no, I care about all that stuff too, or I don't care what happens as far as that goes. But yeah, part of me does miss the way college football was, or at least it appears it was at one point in time.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you think in any way this move, well, one, it's a reaction to Texas OU and the SEC, but do you think in any way that this move could ramp up the exit time for Texas and Oklahoma?
I don't know that these are going to be connected in that way. I mean, I guess that's really a question of it's just how many more moves are still to come here. Certainly, if the SEC and Big Ten decided that they wanted to target Big 12 members and add a bunch of them and kind of destroy the conference, then then I suppose there's kind of that question of, well, what grant of rights if everyone's leaving, that kind of thing. But no, I don't think that's going to necessarily expedite it. I do think that but certainly the one, like, I'm fascinated to know, like, what is George Kliavkoff doing today? Like, what is the next move for him? But I'm sure you can ask the same thing of Greg Sankey. I mean, how does he see this all playing out? Does he look at his move as trying to take, schools from the ACC, which has that grant of rights through 2036? Or does he, kind of, if they're all going to keep growing, and at this point in time, it'd be naive to assume the Big Ten and the SEC are done expanding. What's the move for the SEC?
Yeah. Well, we brought up the scenario.
The ACC does complicate that, doesn't it? That long grant of rights, that does complicate matters a little bit. Because, the obvious would be like, how Twitter is. Go grab FSU and Clemson. But that obviously would be a hefty price tag. Right.
Oh, people definitely, give in to talking about this stuff like it's fantasy football at this point, and that's, in some ways, that's kind of what it feels like, too. I get that.
And look,
it's turned into that in some ways, yeah.
I'll just say, if Florida State's going to suck, let's suck and make money.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a Nebraska
More money,
fan. Yeah.
yes.
Max, you go ahead, Craig. You follow up. I was going to get to Yormark. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's what I was going to ask about as well, Max.
Hey, by the way, did you guys see that KD requested a trade? Like, there's all sorts of stuff that's probably happened today.
Yeah.
That, like, I'm not even aware of because I just really have not been staring at Twitter all day.
Speaking of that, we had someone who watches us say that in L.A. on radio, in sports talk radio in L.A., it's all about Durant and requesting a trade because of the NBA free agency thing that's about to start, and may not even have used USC and UCLA in a sentence, which is just nuts. But
my goodness.
Max, Brett Yormark. I mean, that story was hot for, I guess, a few hours until this all popped off. But were you like everybody else that had to do some digging and figure out who exactly he was and why this was the choice? Because it did seem pretty out of nowhere, the hire of Brett Yormark.
On Sunday night when this leaked out by Sports Illustrated, certainly I was one of the people who was going to Google and looking up who this guy is, and I texted with a few ADs who were saying the same thing. Because even by Sunday night, like, they had not really been told by their presidents this is where it was going. And the interesting thing with that too is, over the course of the search, I heard a few names that were tied to the search. I didn't go out and report them, but I heard a few names of these people are in the mix and getting interviews and stuff. But ultimately, the finalists for that job are people I had not heard of, or at least had not heard they were involved with the Big 12. So it did seem like that outcome was pretty unexpected. But from folks I've talked to, it sounds like he was, Brett Yormark was by far the most impressive person they talked to. I think he really blew away the board with just his, really high energy personality, with all the ideas that he brought to the table. I think there's a real belief that, they've got a guy who's 30 plus years of pro sports experience is really going to fit. And I think they also feel like they need a deal maker right now. They need a businessman in charge, because let's be honest, at some point you do have to just sort of concede that this is becoming more professionalized, and that, as much as there is value in having people that have a lot of on-campus experience, as we've seen by some of these recent commissioner hires, in some ways you're kind of acknowledging, okay, we need to be prepared for the reality that this is all heading off in a direction that is all very new, but also in a lot of ways more like pro sports.
Max, if you could put the dream scenario, if you were the Big 12, let's say that there is the opportunity to add, would it be obvious that you would want, because Oregon and Washington are going to end up in the Big 10, you would think. Would it be Utah?
If not, those are two of the top two, yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be the obvious. But if in fact they were able to add the two schools out of Arizona, and then Utah and whoever, it won't be Cal and Stanford, but if they could add those 4 teams, how much does that help, if at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, will you make $100 million a year like the Big Ten and the SEC? No, obviously not. But I think in terms of strengthening, I think really I think you think back to last summer and when they added the 4 schools they did, you heard people saying, well, this might not be over. And the reason for that is not that necessarily that people were sort of on the fence about Memphis or SMU or other schools. I think the reason for that thinking, and I think even Mike Gundy came out and said it, was probably a belief that, as you approach these TV talks, if there were schools out there that the TV consultants were telling you, hey, you should go get those guys and you'll make way more money, then they're going to do it. I mean, as we saw today, by the shocking news today, this is all driven by money, and this is all driven by the distribution from year to year and all that. And so, I do think if the Big 12 can add those Power 5 schools to their league and weaken the Pac-12 in the process, then the Big 12 is going to make more money. And will it be a ton more money? I have no idea. But certainly right now, you want to make as much as the Pac-12 and ACC. And if you can, make some moves where you're making more than them, then that's better than where you were.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your help, and thanks for being a part of the show on a day like today.
Did anything break while we were talking? Anything else?
There was a Texas.
That's the thing I'm always afraid of.
I'm sure Texas.
I started looking through headlines just a second ago. It's funny you mentioned that, and I was like, oh wow, Calvin Simpson Hunt, Texas highest commit, flipped to Ohio State. I had no idea because we've been following this story, and there's the Kevin Durant thing and the Freddie Freeman thing, and it's wild. It's absolutely wild.
And it looks like the Big Ten board is getting this done tonight too. So it's just gotta keep your head on a swivel. This stuff is moving real fast, fellas.
We know how much you mean to us by being on when you are. I want to tell you the job you did with Nicole and I think Fortuna and the article you wrote about Brett Yormark. It really kind of helped put some things in perspective for me and give me a little bit more background and for others as well. So great job. It's worth the subscription to theathletic.com. Max, thank you.
Hey, I'm glad you guys saw that in the 12 hours that it mattered. I appreciate
that. God, I don't think it was 12. Max Olson, theathletic.com. We're going to blow out off the radar, Craig.
Yeah, I don't care at this point. This is way more interesting. And like I just threw one of the stories out there that would have been in there, but I did see that within the last half hour or so that Calvin Simpson Hunt, an incredibly talented cornerback out of Waxahachie, had been committed to Texas Tech for quite some time and was really kind of the crown jewel or one of the jewels of the class, so to speak, for Texas Tech. If you follow the kind of the composite rankings on 247, and I know there's On3 and Rivals and all of that, but I know at one point 247 in their composite for the 2023 class had Tech at number 1, number 2. It's kind of dependent on what day that you looked at that, and a large part of that had to do with 247's formula, where if you do have more commits, it does weigh heavier. So you knew that wasn't going to last necessarily. But what was interesting was, they also had that class high, not only because of the numbers, but because of guys like Calvin Simpson Hunt. And then Ohio State came calling, much like they've come calling for Austin Novosad, Baylor's quarterback commit. And there was some talk about him, Simpson Hunt flipping. And in fact, he has flipped, it looks like, within the last hour or so. So big get for the Buckeyes, a loss for Tech. I'm sure they'll manage fine. But, that was of interest.
And I want to throw this in there, and we got to get back to your calls in chat. Jalen Brunson, that news, signs this is from the NBA Shams, intends to sign a 4-year, nearly $110 million deal. I thought I saw that he was going to meet with Cuban and Jason Kidd or whatever, but that's been kind of out there. And from Pro Football Talk, Deshaun Watson.
Leaving Luka to go play for the Knicks. Come on, man.
Deshaun Watson hearing has ended. Knowledge of the proceedings from a source. NFL interviewed 12 alleged victims. At the hearing, focused on 5 of the women making allegations against Watson. The case presented by the NFL included no evidence of violence, threat, force, or coercion by Deshaun Watson. The NFL admitted that the punishment it seeks, indefinite suspension, at least a year, is unprecedented. And so they will get to, that's going to be drawn out. We know that for quite some time. And that thing, they just put up a story on ProFootballTalk.com if you're interested. Thank you to nearly 1,700 at one point that we're watching today. So much to get to. We can't even get to all the chat, but we know it's there. We're watching it. Thank you. You all go back and forth, and we appreciate it. Sick'em 365 Radio, 365 Sports will be up until 6 today. And so, okay, here we go. Getting back to some of the comments, text messages, and more on the UCLA and USC UCLA bolting, not yet official, but just a matter of time for the Big 12. And I've seen this a lot in the chat room and also this text, and I want to Stanford and Cal. I don't want to say I would give up a body part, but there is no way I could ever see, no matter the situation, that they would ever want to be a part of the Big 12 and or a fit. And they just won't ever be a part of it. They'll do their own thing, and like we've even said, they might even just say, hell, let's go independent. Or maybe they'll be a part of another wave to the Big 10. We'll see.
Yeah, we got to get back on call-in, guys, real quick. That was my fault. I took us off because I didn't think we were going back.
254-339-1122, 254-339-1122.
Hold on, there was an interesting text earlier I wanted to get to, and there's just so many I can't find it. Yeah, let's just go on about your business, I thought. Here it is. From the 979, the possibility that we may come out of this with Utah and BYU being a Big 12 conference game is wild.
It's not out of the question.
Yeah. I mean, how do BYU fans feel about that? I mean, I'd love to know. BYU fans out there, how would you feel about being conference mates with Utah? I know that Utah got their big ha-ha moment, joining the Pac-12 and being able to say that they were in a power conference, and then here comes BYU. And now they're going to be in a power conference, and I'm sure there was a lot of trash talking back and forth between the two, and I know there was. I saw some of it this time last year when all that was going on. But yeah, now Utah suddenly gone from ha-ha, the kid pointing and laughing, to, now we're a little bit more eye-to-eye, but ha-ha still. And now it's, maybe moving in next door might be on the cards or in the cards for Utah. Who knows? But, yeah, I mean, I think – all the speculation's fun, but till we see what the end goal is for the Big Ten or for the SEC, and let's make clear, whatever the future of college football looks like, as far as right now and determining that future, they are the two that are calling the shots. How much more do they want to chew on and bite off from others before they're done and satisfied and full, and what's left over from that?
Great point. Hey, Ryan Abraham, who covers Southern Cal, will join us at 5:30 on this show, 5:30 Central Time. Ryan Abraham, that's a great get for us and you, our audience on the USC UCLA story.
We got a couple calls, but I do want to leave. Craig, you asked Ben Mora, who I assume is a BYU fan, says yes, Utah. Remick Johnson has a Utah logo, says Utah would be good in the Big 12.
I think they fit. I do. I don't know about all the other stuff, but I think their style fits as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to welcome Utah into the Big 12. I mean, I'm just asking BYU fans what you think, but in general, yeah.
Avery Cope, I'm a BYU fan. I'd love to have Utah back. B. Smith, BYU fan here, no Utah. So. So that there you go. Oh no, Ben Moore is he's a UH Cougs. He said go Cougs, and then he had to say UH because again, they're both Cougars. So
right.
There's certainly a split on it. I'm sure it's probably a little bit maybe on a smaller scale of how if you asked A&M and Texas fans how you really feel about it. Really feel about it.
Oh no, because
would you want to play the game again? There'll be some they'll say, no, we're done with them. We divorced them. Yeah. I hate that they're coming back. But in your heart of hearts, you're like, yeah, I want the fight song to make sense again.
I think with A&M though, it's still the fact that they thought they had gotten away the last decade, and then all of a sudden here comes your neighbor that you don't like, and they don't like you.
You finally got all these advantages that you've been wanting for, your entire history, and they've all been completely wiped out by the fact that all the advantages are now going to be the same advantages that the school that you hated has.
And everything
that you had has basically been wiped out. And I would actually, when it came to the Texas thing, y'all are kind of bouncing around. It made me forget. Oh, yeah, I'm very curious to see how this all works out with Oklahoma, because I'm not completely sold on them just having the same levels of success. And I know that some people have said, for example, with, Missouri joining the SEC years and years ago, it's like, yeah, but you might not have so much success, but it's the money part, right? We all hear about how great the money is. And the money is great. And, you could certainly use the money. But you know who they partnered with on this move, right? Mm-hmm. So you basically trusted the snake to secure your future, and I'm still not fully convinced that there's not some part of Texas that knew what they were doing when they brought Oklahoma along, that they, in part, they probably could have moved on their own, but in part needed Oklahoma to fully make the move make sense, and knew by doing so that not only were they strengthening themselves, but were able to convince Oklahoma they were strengthening them, even though they're really undermining them ultimately. And I know that's a more long game, and that's more of a conspiracy theory, but that is a part of all of this movement and all the stuff that's going on that's going to be overlooked because now we're focusing on all the new stuff. But that is something that I was thinking about last night.
I think I get what you're saying, and I'm telling you from day one, back when all hell broke loose at the end of July, and soon after that, when I was able to talk to someone who was very good for us, and yes, we still had to confirm everything, that we were ahead of the curve on the expansion in the Big 12 when all of them made sense, that I'm not so sure that even though Texas was known as being the bad guy, that Oklahoma's not the one that was the guy that was drunk at the bar, threw the first punch, passed out, and the other guy got all the beating.
No, I think they were definitely more involved than they got blamed for. And Texas took the brunt of it. Yeah, that was BS. I mean, they deserved at least 50% credit for the move and 50% blame for the move and all that. But I know that's more big picture, whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's dominoes that started to fall, and now dominoes are falling again a year later, and they're massive dominoes, and it's just going to be really interesting to see what tomorrow looks like. Because by tonight, I mean, the move could be done for USC and UCLA. I mean, they're voting on that bad boy. So by tomorrow morning, that could be done. And then it's like what happens over the course of this weekend, much less what happens, ultimately when OU and Texas join the SEC, which is still like a couple years away at this point. So it's just fascinating times, and I also know for a lot of people out there, very frustrating times. I know Pac-12 fans, we could be total D-heads and be like a lot of other people were about a year ago when the Big 12 was falling apart and tell you ha-ha and point at you and laugh, because I remember some of those people. Not going to do that. I know today sucks for a lot of fans out there, especially the fans who don't know what the future looks like. That's how Baylor fans felt. That's how TCU fans felt. That's how a lot of teams other than OU and Texas felt. So I'm sure there's a lot of Big 12 fans that feel your pain. But hopefully everybody finds good landing spots, and we'll see how the Pac-12 reacts. But, the Big 12 and the timing from last year, we had the caller of like, well, what if they would have known? Well, that's a whole like what if that just is not even possible to really rationalize or even begin to unpack, because that's not what happened. I mean, but the fact that timing was what it was, imagine the shoe being reversed. Had the Pac-12 had this happen a year ago, and then all of a sudden today we're hearing about Texas and OU leaving, the Big 12 would be totally screwed.
I'm glad you brought that up, because somebody asked this question, and I don't think it is. My answer is no, but it's a monster. When I saw that today, I'm like, oh, my God. It's not in any way, in my opinion, as big as it is, it's still not the shoe that dropped when Texas and Oklahoma's story was broken by Brett Zerneman. To me, that was the opening salvo, but it was a nuclear one. This one's big, but it's not like what it was a year ago.
Yeah, real quick, we're having a bit of a software issue on the phones. So if you're trying to call in, we're having a software issue.
Well, then just please text us if you can, and we'll try to get to those as best we can.
We are going to, and it's college football related, the Elite 11 quarterback competition that's going on right now out in where is that? God, I just went blank on where they're having that. With Austin Novosad, who's a commitment to Baylor, and Arnold from Denton Geyer committed to OU, among others, Alabama, Malachi Nelson, USC. We're going to have one of the On3 Sports recruiting guys who's going to join us, Spiegelman is going to join us, who's out there as they go into the last day of the Elite 11. He'll join us around 5:10 today in about 15 minutes.
It's in Oregon.
Yeah. Paul, you want to break?
Yeah, we can do it now.
Do a break here, and we'll try to also patch that up as well. Hey, we love you, man. We appreciate your feedback and time. Spread the word. Hit the like button. If you want to do a super chat, you don't have to, but we'd appreciate it. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Ryan Abraham, one of the first people I thought about when the news on USC and UCLA and the Big Ten hit was him. I texted him. He said, check back with me. He's nice enough to join us. InsideTroy.com joins us on this day in college athletics we'll remember for a long time. Ryan, thanks for your time. What's been the feedback from Southern Cal fans?
That's a funny question because I assumed it was going to be all positive. And I put a Twitter poll out soon afterwards, and it's about 55% positive and 45% negative. I've had some USC super fans reach out to me saying that they don't like it because of the travel and things like that. But I don't think they're grasping the big picture of how college football is changing so quickly. And there was no way, if you're USC, when you're competing for national championships, you have top 3 classes, right? I don't think they would be able to continue to do that against Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia if those conferences and those schools are, if they're making 3 times as much money in TV money than USC is. And that's what looked like was going to be happening with these new TV deals coming for the SEC and the Big Ten. So I think to stay competitive, you have to make a move like this. But at least the initial reaction, the fans haven't been all that happy about it. I mean, for the most part, they're happy, but there's a lot more fans that are upset about it than I expected them to be.
Ryan, did this start last year when the first big ripple happened with Texas and Oklahoma?
I think so. I think that's a big piece of this puzzle. But I talked to Mike Bone in 2020 about this just because, USC, when Larry Scott was running the Pac-12, USC didn't have great athletic directors. Pat Hayden, they just accepted deals where USC was making as much money as Oregon State was or Colorado. And that's just, and USC's bringing all this, TV revenue and cachet to the conference. And I felt like that wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to be sustainable. But that's kind of the way Larry Scott wanted it. George Kliavkoff comes in, focuses more on making the playoffs, focuses more on your marquee programs. And I asked, Mike Bone about just what they were going to do. At the time, Larry Scott was still a commissioner. He told me everything was on the table. They could look to go independent. They could look to join another conference. So you knew they were at least going to explore it. And I thought you had to no matter what, because if you explore it, you could at least get a better deal from the Pac-12 if they know that you could potentially leave. USC wasn't going to potentially leave before. They didn't have the tough enough leadership. Now they do. And he took it another step. He didn't just explore going somewhere else. It looks like they're going somewhere else. So it's a huge move, but man, it's one I really didn't see coming.
Right. Well, Ryan, that kind of answers, I guess, part of my next question. Smokey asked you what the fans' reaction have been. What was your reaction? And when did this first kind of get on your radar? Was it this morning like everybody else, or did you have a little bit of a heads up?
No, I was at the Elite 11, quarterback finals. It's in Redondo Beach, right near where I live, covering USC has a quarterback commit there, Malachi Nelson. There's a whole bunch of top-level quarterbacks that are there, and that's what we were going to cover today. And then we get the tweet from John Wilner, who does a great job covering the Pac-12, and then just had to drop everything and run in the studio and start talking about it. But I didn't know the timing. I mean, I knew USC would explore, and I thought that things would kind of leak where, hey, USC could potentially go here, or maybe they'll go independent. And sort of leading up to the Pac-12's media, new media deal in 2024, USC would have a bigger say in that. But man, it looked like, kind of similar to a contract. The Pac-12 TV deal is up 2 years from tomorrow. So apparently, one of the reporters from CBS Sports was talking about this was the last day to inform the Pac-12 without having some sort of financial repercussions for leaving. So this seemed like a very strategic move. All the things kind of happened at once. But yeah, to have it happening today, I was completely blindsided by it. Just, covering some recruiting event, not this.
Do you think there's any way Lincoln Riley knew this was in the works when he took the job?
I don't think so. I mean, so Mike Bone has definitely, it's not like it didn't come up today. It could have, they could have like hinted at, hey, we're going to look, because they talked about, building new facilities and getting more, money that way. And that could have been something that was enticing. Hey, we could potentially even leave the Pac-12. But I don't know if they were far enough along when he was hired on.
Right.
I think the hire, though, does help USC because USC was 4-8 last year. They're still like the marquee reason you'd want to bring in the LA schools, right? It's USC. But they were a team that's been bad. They've been bad for quite a while. But once they hired Mike Bone, once they brought in Lincoln Riley, it showed the Big Ten, hey, this program's serious about football now. So I think he certainly helped with the deal. I just don't know if I don't think he was involved, or I don't think he was really informed much earlier than, probably everyone else was.
Ryan, I know we have you just for a few minutes because you have another hit at 5:40 Central Time. Have you thought about what this means to the Rose Bowl? Is that even like a factor on anybody's radar?
No, it is. I've heard people talk about it, and a lot of USC fans that were upset about it mentioned the Rose Bowl because it's a great tradition. Like USC's won 25 Rose Bowls, more than any other program's even gone to. They're a big part of the Rose Bowl and the tradition and the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. But I think, you're going to go to the Big Ten, you could still go to the Rose Bowl. And the Rose Bowl's changing. I mean, college football's changing. When the playoff comes, I know the Rose Bowl traditionalists are hanging on to that as much as they can. And I think you could still make it an amazing game, but it's just going to be different than what it was before. When you have the most prominent team the team that's gone to the Rose Bowl the most, moving conferences, it's definitely going to change the landscape, of that game. And UCLA plays in the Rose Bowl for their home game, so there's certainly a lot of ties there. But I don't think, at any bowl game, I think the Rose Bowl can kind of stand up to the new landscape of college football. But they're going to have to embrace some changes that I think they've been reluctant to accept, and the date might change. The conference affiliations might change. I think a lot of that stuff is going to change because USC and UCLA are leaving the Pac-12.
Can the Pac-12 keep this thing together, or is it just now, paddling the boat until everybody decides where they want to go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think if you look at, I talked to people, national writers and stuff about this. I think USC and UCLA, if you compare them to Texas and Oklahoma, the overall cachet and national brand awareness, you got to give the edge to Texas and Oklahoma just because UCLA is just not as strong as a USC is. But I think it's more devastating to the Pac-12 to lose USC and UCLA than Texas and Oklahoma for the Big 12. It's like 2 torpedoes in your side for the Big 12. But it's probably like 4 torpedoes in your side for the Pac-12. You're trying to put a bullet hole on a Band-Aid here. I don't know what George Kliavkoff can do, who, by the way, 1 year on the job as of tomorrow. What an anniversary present for this one. If anyone can put it together, I really like what he's been doing, but Larry Scott just kind of put him in a really tough spot. So I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it together. The Big 12 already got the best group of 5 teams that were available out there. If you bring in Boise State and San Diego State and Fresno State, what does that really do? I think Oregon's going to be chomping at the bit to leave. And they're going to be next up. There's potential for Utah, for Washington, for Colorado. So I think it's going to be really tough for Larry Scott to keep this together. If anyone can, it's him. But he was just put in a really tough spot.
Do you think that there's already? Well, I guess everybody's just wondering kind of the same things. But do you think there's other Pac-12 teams that are negotiating potentially with the Big Ten right now that this thing's not quite done, or do you think that it's going to be the LA schools and that's kind of what they're good with?
From some of the reports I saw, it sounds like there's still more Pac-12 schools on the radar there. I think Oregon, you would be silly to not.
Sure.
And it's a great brand, and Oregon's got to be extremely upset that UCLA left before they would. And I talked about this when the Texas-Oklahoma news broke, and I said, hey, if someone poaches the Pac-12, there's no scenario that USC wouldn't be involved in. But every other school could be left out. And Oregon fans got on me. They're like, there's no way Oregon would be left out. They might not be, but there was definitely a scenario where it was a package deal with USC and UCLA, and they move on and then just take those 2 schools. And that looked like what's happening. They're probably in the best spot because if they put the notice in today, they'll have less financial, I guess there wouldn't be any kind of financial penalty to leave when the TV deal's up in 2024. So Oregon can still do it, but it might be a little more painful for them too. But they're going to be a desirable, they're a desirable brand that people would want in their conference. So I think the SEC started this war with the Texas-Oklahoma thing, and now the Big Ten's, firing their shot. And I just think it's a matter of time before schools like Oregon and Washington kind of come along for the ride somewhere, or the Big 12 and the Pac-12 merge together, something like that. There's got to be something big. This can't be a standalone event.
If they lose any more other than UCLA and USC, Paul brought this up, if they lose a couple, do you feel like then they're crippled?
Done. Because, you have programs like Stanford that I don't even know if they want to play this game. They might bow out and say, we're not doing NIL. I know we went to a bunch of Rose Bowls and we had like top 5 teams for years, Jim Harbaugh and early David Shaw, but this doesn't seem like a Stanford thing. Like Stanford does their way. The way college football is going, I think they could opt out of this. And, the Oregon States of the world, the Washington States, like, what are you going to do? They're going to be Mountain West teams. So if like an Oregon and Washington leave, there's nothing really left to save. And it's going to be kind of like every man for themselves, kind of figure out what the best, landing spot is. And it could be a boom for the Mountain West. They'll probably get a lot of good programs for the Pac-12.
Ryan, I don't know when I'll get to ask this again, so I got to reuse a question I asked earlier, but what was your favorite memory from the Alliance?
I mean, I think when the questions were asked about what kind of contract was signed, and they just said, it's a handshake deal.
Yeah.
So this has a very similar feel to when the SEC sort of stabbed the Big 12 in the back and Bob Bowlsley when they're negotiating the playoff and then steals their 2 best programs. Same sort of thing. Like, Kevin Warren over at the Big 10. Yeah, we'll have a deal with you, but we're going to do what's best for us. I think there was some hope that because they made an alliance that the Big 10 wouldn't come calling and poach the Pac-12 schools, but I never thought that was like a realistic thing. I don't know what happened this quickly, but that's probably my favorite thing. Oh, there's nothing in writing, just a handshake deal. Like, yeah, that went away quickly.
Crazy.
Ryan,
Crazy.
Thank you very much on this wild day that we experienced about 11 months ago and you experienced today. Thanks for your time. I know you've been crazy. At Inside Troy on Twitter, USCFootball.com. He does a great job with the Trojans. Chris Vanini, this is a fun Nope, I had not either. And then, today, after reading this late last night with Ross Dellinger and then doing a little bit of due diligence earlier today, spoke with an administrator, a part of the Big 12, and this is the tweet I put up a little bit afternoon today. You're not going to beat Big 10 or SEC in revenue arms race playing their game. You must have someone who has vision, is a big thinker, a deal maker, and he has the it factor. And then on top of that, some of the bullet points to that particular discussion as well. And this is nothing really different than what we've discussed. They have to look at some ways different outside the box, creativity, and not just saying it. Yes, new ways to generate revenue. We have discussed that in a ton of different ways. Big thinker, deal maker based on sponsorship deals. This is from Yormark, not from him, but about him. He initially did the Sprint NASCAR Cup Series for $750 million. Take Barclays Center, turned it into a college basketball place, not just for the Brooklyn Nets, and in fact took some basketball games out of Madison Square Garden. That's hard to do, and you're not going to compete again and keep that race with the SEC or Big Ten. Maybe not even compete, but stay close enough without some sort of thinking outside the box, and this guy's got it factor. That's from somebody. We'll hear from Mac Rhodes again at 4:20 today. Your thoughts, both of you guys, this is definitely from not within the college athletics realm.
No, but he's worked in sports before, and he's now worked in entertainment, and he's from Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z's company, which I got to tell you, if there was a conference that was going to hire somebody away from Rock Nation, I would not have pegged the Big 12 to be it, just based on everything they've done in their past. But I like it. It's an outside-the-box hire, and again, I don't know anything about Brett Yormark to be able to sit down and say, like, well, listen, he's going to out-college commissioner every other college commissioner. I don't know that, but it falls in line with, what the Pac-12 did with Kliavkov and getting somebody who has to think about things in a different manner. And look, the Big Ten and the SEC, like your source said there, can continue playing their game and, kind of putting their conference commissioners in out of the farm system, so to speak, because everything they've already set up the game to work for them. So the other conferences really do have to get creative if they want to do something different, especially ones like the Pac-12 who much to the Big 12's chagrin, don't look like one of the worst run conferences, even though they had been before George Kliavkov, and the Big 12, which, is at crisis points at several times throughout its history. So having somebody who's outside the box, I think, is great.
I don't know what to think about it, honestly. I mean, because I don't know anything about the guy. Yay. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I really don't know. Like, I don't know much about him. I know what I've read, and I know that he's been successful in what he's done. But in terms of, like, he's the new Big 12 commissioner, like, okay, yeah, we'll see. I certainly like it more than, going the retread route of an Oliver Luck, because that would have just taken you right into the same space you've basically always been in. and wouldn't have brought you any more respect or any really brand new ideas or anything that you really are in need of. So I like that they went completely outside of the box, but it's so outside of the box in a way that I really don't know what to make of him or what the future is, but I'm excited by that because it's not entirely predictable and it's not some retread name. So, I look forward to hearing what Mack Rhoades has to say. I look forward to hearing from the new commissioner at Big 12 Media Days. I would assume that we'll hear from him there, and I just look forward to learning more about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited that they've made the hire. I'm excited about the possibilities. I'm excited that it is some new blood because that's what they are certainly in need of. But in terms of, like, yay or nay, I don't know because I don't know enough. Yeah.
We don't know. I'd never heard of him. I got to be honest with you. I'd barely ever heard of Matt Rule before it was announced that he was the head coach. Only the fact that he happened to be the coach at Temple was on the rise the year that Baylor took him and brought him into Waco. But what I think more important than the name is his resume and what he has done. He's brokered and has been a part of landmark type deals. $750 million Sprint was Nextel initially, Sprint, and then NASCAR. I think somebody else, Xfinity now runs that particular sponsorship. The Barclays Center, which he has now turned that into a college basketball type haven as well at times. And the fact that I think anytime you can come out of Rock Nation or anything as part of the not even new blood, but the blood that now is different and it's successful, he's learned from that. But as far as who he is, what he knows, does he know much about college athletics? Do you really need to know too much about college athletics anymore as a CEO? Sure you do, but maybe not the old school. You have to have been an athletic director for 25 years and then a part of this for 25 years. And to me, this means that everyone's on board. And all of the candidates, none of the three, according to Ross Dellinger last night, none of them really were a part of the college football landscape or college athletics landscape. So it seems to me that the Big 12 said, this is who we need, which we've discussed in many ways. It doesn't have to be someone attached to athletics. We can make that something that we deal with later.
I would think that one of the prompts crazy era of college athletics that we've had the last couple of years was someone who could navigate the NCAA and kind of deal with all that. Well, since the NCAA is falling apart right before our eyes, they need somebody who thinks about college athletics in the modern scope that they are. So having somebody who came out of college athletics might have been hard because even if there were somebody who was forward thinking, they're still maybe stuck in the mud a little bit on certain things. So, yeah, I mean, I can see their look for someone who is outside that world because that world, as we know it, is completely over. So, might as well start fresh in that regard if it's a qualification you need.
I guess for me, the fresh part, like I definitely agree with. I saw somebody as an article talking about, if it was up to me, I would have gone with Shane Lyons of West Virginia, and there's others like the Oliver Luck thing, but like that would have been so ho-hum. I mean, it really would have been. I think we all respect Oliver Luck, but that would have been kind of ho-hum. I mean, as familiar as it was. Shane Lyons, I mean, maybe he would have been great, but I mean, what the Big 12's been doing so far hasn't been working. I mean, the way that they'd want it to work. All these moves, kumbaya and all this, and two teams leave. When everything seems like it was all set up. And it's been constant dysfunction for the most part for this conference, so they needed to swing big, I feel like. And what's the risk? The risk is like you have another Texas OU situation, but you're kind of been teetering on that the entire time anyway, so why not just swing for the hell of it and say, you know what? We're going for the grand slam rather than the bunt or the single, and we're just going to say, screw it. Like, this either works or it doesn't, and if it does, then we're going to, establish ourselves as the number 3 conference, and there's going to be no bones about it. And if it doesn't work, then how different are we from where we are to begin with? I mean, in terms of stability and security and all of those things, because they're not on the safest ground for starters. This isn't like you're hiring a guy who's coming in and he knows for a fact that everything's good to go pretty much no matter what, as long as he's around. This is a conference that you don't know what the hell around the corner is coming, I mean, quite frankly. So, it's interesting that the part to me is just it doesn't seem like a fit because all the stuff about TV deals and Barclays and all that, but there is nothing about the Big 12 to me that makes me think of Barclays Center. There's nothing about Rock Nation that makes me think of the Big 12, quite frankly. It's a Midwest, Southern it's not the big flashy entertainment. And when I think of Rock Nation, I think of New York City. I think of Barclays. I think of, Jay-Z. And I don't think of any of those things when I think of the Big 12. So it's kind of like two different kind of brands.
To me, then maybe that does make sense.
Well, that's what I was getting to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's why I think that it's, interesting in that regard, is that it's so completely different from just the way that I view the Big 12, and I'm sure a lot of other people do, is just sort of the good old Midwest, Big 12 conference that's just, I don't know, kind of there. They're sort of in need of an identity, in many ways, and they know that. And so to hire this guy when they know that screams to me that, they're undergoing a pretty big identity change somehow or another.
He's been named 3 times 40 under 40 list by Sports Business Journal, selected twice to the 40 under 40 list by Crain's New York Business for a guy who's up and coming when it comes to business. In entertainment business. Well, college football really is an entertainment business.
Yeah, it is. And I think if that's what you're going for, like if the Big 12 was a guy right now, he would shop at Old Navy and he'd have really comfortable, sensible New Balances.
Yeah.
What they need the Big 12 to be is somebody, who wears Yeezys. I mean, that's what they need it to be, because the world's changing. Right now, they don't need sensible. They need something different, They need something that's going to be big and shoot big, because and parts of this because of who the membership was, not only with Texas and Oklahoma, but with Nebraska and Missouri and A&M and Colorado on the back. They were a conference that at their history kind of still shot to the middle. They were fine to, as long as we're here.
What happened is they were a part of the lead pack at a horse race, and eventually they're the ones, when you make the turn, that everyone passed them by over time. And then they were lagging behind, and the SEC and the Big Ten just roar to have everybody like their secretariat or whoever. And now the Big 12 is. What will it hurt?
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned that. What would it hurt? I don't know how much he'll be involved, and this is not. And I don't mean to be criticism. I don't know how much he will be involved in the day-to-day football operations, and I don't know how much of that role will be his. But that's why you have other people within your entire business of the Big 12. You have Ed Stewart, among others, who are a part of, and maybe the football operations. But that's probably not fair to Brett Yormark for me to say that, because I'm sure he's a sports fan. Maybe we just don't know how much. But as far as the CEO running the business, getting ways to earn extra revenue streams, signing deals outside the box, he does seem to check those boxes. And we'll have Mack Rhoades, who can't probably talk about him, but can talk about the role that the new Big 12 commissioner will have.
Well, I'm pretty positive he's a sports fan, given his work with Barclays and the Nets and all that. But, I mean, how much does he know about Ames, Iowa? Or,
Well, how much does Ames, Iowa know about him?
Well, no, I know that, but he's the one in charge, not Ames, Iowa. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they know about him. It matters what he knows. He's the one that's going to be making the decisions, and he's the one that's going to be guiding the conference. So,
but he does work for Ames, Iowa, too.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, that's what I'm getting back to, is the Big 12 is I don't relate them to Rock Nation and Barclays and NYC and all these things. It's a lot flashier. It's a lot shinier. It's a lot fresher, and that's things that the Big 12 needs.
Yep.
How does he bring that vision, and does he understand that it's not all glitz and glamour in the Big 12? How does he, as I'm just saying, it's two different kind of just viewpoints. The Big 12 stale, sort of no flash, get no respect from the media no matter what they do. Just it doesn't matter what they do unless it's Oklahoma or Texas. No one cares about the rest of the conference. And I don't know how to really explain it. Ames, Iowa doesn't know much about him, but I don't know. Ames, Iowa is not the one making the call on a lot of things. I'm just saying, how much does he know about Baylor and private schools and Waco, Texas, and all of that? He knows about New York City and Brooklyn. Great. But that's not the market that he's playing to with the teams that are in the Big 12 right now. That's what I'm getting
from
at.
Paula. And
We're now joined by Baylor President Dr. Linda Livingstone, Board of Governors with the NCAA, Transformational Committee, Search Committee for the Big 12 to find a new commissioner. And, Doctor, you did. You found one. And Brett Yormark, had you heard much about him prior to the commissioner search?
I had not. It's certainly not someone that even when we initially started this process would have been on any of our radar screens. And, in fact, most of us in this world know folks that are very connected within intercollegiate athletics but don't have as much connection into folks that are in the pro sports and media and entertainment world. And so he was brought to us, of course, by our search firm, Turnkey, along with several other really interesting non-traditional candidates and some really great traditional candidates. And so it was a diverse pool that gave us a lot of different people to look at with different skill sets, different levels of insight into the kind of different aspects of what are going to be important to us going forward. And Brett rose to the top of that process, and we're really excited about what's ahead for us.
You hear about the fact that he's a big thinker, he's a deal breaker, that he builds relationships. Obviously, with what he's done, he has handled some major negotiations with sponsorships, with NASCAR, with Barclays Center, among others. How much did that come into consideration of what he's already done?
Well, that was really critically important to us because we know going forward that, looking at how we handle sponsorships both at our schools and at the conference level, looking at media rights as we prepare for a new media deal, as we transition schools into the conference, as we transition schools out, and then as we think about the broader landscape of college athletics and all that's going on in the NCAA and just the uncertainty and change that's going to take place there, that having someone that was a visionary that could help us think outside the box, that brought a skill set that could really help us leverage some of those new areas that we're going to have to deal with and put more emphasis on them we probably have historically, was going to be really important to us. And so, again, Brett brings so much of that to the table, and he's highly regarded in his industry and for the expertise he brings. So we feel like, given where college athletics is now, which is different than where it's been in the past, it was the right decision for the conference moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because of the college athletics in general has been, I guess you could say, turned upside down the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, there's always, like you said, there were traditional candidates as well. It was the timing for him and him being interested in the Big 12 just perfect because of all that we've seen for the last couple of years?
Oh, I absolutely think so. I think even if you'd gone back 2 or 3 years or 3 or 4 years, we might have come to a different conclusion than we did. And there's been so much upheaval in the last couple of years with some of the court cases and, some of the legal issues, as well as, what we're seeing with NIL and other things. I think we're going to all have to think a little bit differently about how we lead and manage intercollegiate athletics while ensuring the integrity of it in the context of our academic institutions and really the primacy of the academic mission within the context of all of this. And so, having some folks in the mix that think very differently about it is going to be important to us. We have amazing athletic directors in our conference who know intercollegiate athletics deeply, who understand this. That will be wonderful partners for Brett in this process. I think he recognizes that as he kind of looks at his team going forward, that bringing somebody on that has that deep intercollegiate athletics knowledge is going to be important as well. It's kind of what he did at NASCAR. He went into NASCAR, knew nothing really about or very little about racing, and brought somebody in that was really deeply embedded in that industry. And so he brought one thing to the table, and he brought somebody in that brought things to the table that he didn't. So I think he also, and this was our sense as we interviewed him, knows what he knows and knows what he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important skill for a leader, so that you put the people around you that help you to do what you do really well, and then do the things that are areas where you need some assistance or people with a different skill set than you have.
How relieved, I don't know if that's the right word, but how nice is it that once the Bob Bowlesby announcement came down and media days aren't until mid-July, there's a couple of weeks of everyone having a chance to kind of take a deep breath, including yourself and maybe even us, but how important was it to get this out and move forward?
Well, we felt like doing this search in a very timely way was really important, and we did. I mean, we put when President Skubnik and Chancellor Girard and I met with the search firm. We talked with the other presidents and chancellors. We knew we wanted to do a very efficient process. It would be much better if we could bring somebody on board, before we get into the fall semester and particularly the start of football season. Now, we weren't going to do that at the expense of making sure we found who we thought was the best candidate, but we worked closely with the search firm. We put together a really tight timeline. And then we lived by that. Credit to the search firm for really leaning into it. And then, all of us in the conference that were involved really stepping up and making our calendars work to make it happen. So we thought it was really important. We think this is going to be really good going into the new year. And then when we've got the new schools coming in next summer, it really gives a year runway for the new commissioner to help ensure that happens in a really fabulous way. And actually, we can even begin the messaging in a way that gets everybody excited about what we're going to look like a year from now, different than we look like now.
I saw the release, and not many that I can remember commissioners in sports other than professionally. Do you have, for example, the NBA commissioner in Adam Silver, who knows Brett from his time with Barclays, among other things that he's done with Rock Nation as well. That was unique. And then also Fox Sports CEO and executive producer Eric Shanks, I think he's got a pretty good friendship with him as well. Anything to read into the fact that Fox Sports was a part of the quote when it comes to the release because of the relationship Big 12 has with Fox Sports and possible future TV negotiations in a couple of years?
Well, Brett had that relationship, I think, because of his time at the Nets when they negotiated a deal with Fox. So I think that relationship goes back a long way. But it certainly matters to us that Brett has those kinds of relationships within the media world, given how important that's going to be to us in the next several years as we look at a new media rights deal. And so I think we felt like having someone like that that speaks into the skill set that Brett brings and the credibility that he brings is important as we approach those new negotiations. So we were pleased that he was willing to share. And, of course, having Adam Silver speak into it was also fabulous, given his kind of many years of working with Brett.
You hear all the time, Big Ten, SEC, and then there's everyone else in the Power Fives, and that sometimes can get people the hair on the back of your neck or the whatever. You kind of get a little bit frustrated with that because of how maybe nationally people look at the Big 12, Pac-12, ACC. But you're in the middle of all this with all the committees and, like I said, Board of Governors, Transformational Committee. Were you thrilled, happy, in a nice way, surprised what the interest was for someone to want to be a part of this conference despite some of the things that have happened recently?
Well, we were thrilled with the quality of candidates we had, both non-traditional and traditional. And I think it speaks to the perspective that very broadly the conference is viewed as very strong. Very broadly, people were excited about the new schools that we're bringing in. Frankly, very excited about the broad national footprint that we now have from the East Coast to the Mountain region and, frankly, into the West Coast with the addition of BYU. And so I think it just showed that people have great confidence in the conference and where we're going, and that people were very excited about the opportunity to lead and help the conference become even stronger in the future. So, yeah, we were thrilled with the quality of the candidates from both non-traditional and traditional avenues. And, again, I think it speaks well to the conference and how it's viewed out there.
How quickly did you know, with all respect to everyone else who was a candidate, when Brett, when you guys met him, got to know him, could you tell perhaps that he was, I don't want to use the word unique, but this could be someone special?
Well, you could tell early on, and there were several candidates that I would put into this bucket, that he brought something to the table that could be very, very important to us. It was in a way a challenging process because we had such a strong pool, and there were really strong candidates both through the process and then in the finals as well. And so again, I think that speaks to his strengths and what he brought, and the confidence that the presidents and chancellors had in him after meeting him. But you knew when you first met him that there was something about him that could be really exciting for the conference going forward. And again, we had several candidates like that, but of course he kind of emerged at the end as the one we really had great confidence in leading us forward.
I know as part of the transformational committee, you guys are always involved in something. I did see today where the coaching, I guess the coaching staff limits will stay in place for perhaps another year. Is that just a matter of time, you think, before that changes?
There are several areas that we're looking at with regard to some of the rules and rules modernization that will probably happen much sooner than that are lots of broad support for. That is one where I think we need to have more conversation about it. And it's, as we've surveyed and talked to folks about it, there are some different perspectives on kind of the pros and cons of doing that. And then how does that fit with, the things we're doing to support student athletes at an even a greater level, what we're doing about kind of how we're managing recruiting days and those kinds of things. And so we just want to make sure that as we modernize the rules and think about how we can reduce, some of the bureaucracy and red tape, that we're doing it in areas that matter the most and have the most impact, particularly in ways that benefit student athletes, and then we're not doing it just for the sake of changing. So that is one that we need to put some more thought into, understand better the potential implications, and get more feedback in the process. So I don't know that I have a thought yet on where I think that's going to go at the end of the day, but it is one we're going to spend more time understanding and listening to folks about.
Dr. Linda Livingstone, Baylor University. Again, Brett Yormark named the Big 12 commissioner, among a couple of other things. What has been the reaction you have received from your peers on the hiring of Brett Yormark?
Well, the vast majority of the response that I've gotten and frankly that I've seen as I've kind of monitored social media has been really positive because I see him as a potential game changer and understand the changing landscape of intercollegiate athletics and the need to have maybe a different way of thinking about it. There's certainly people out there that are skeptical and don't, when you don't know somebody, you do kind of go, this is kind of interesting. I wonder what this means. But in general, the response has been extremely positive. And I think as people meet Brett, as they get to know him and hear his thinking about where we could go as a conference and some of his exciting ideas. He really is an out-of-the-box thinker, very visionary. I think those people that just don't know him and don't know what to think will understand why we chose him and why we think he's the right person to lead us into this sort of next stage of life for the Big 12 Conference.
13 months ago, the Big 12 was rocked with the decision or the report that came out about Texas, Oklahoma, and the SEC. And, of course, it seemed like, my gosh, it was like what's next? And the conference recovered. Bob Bowlesby and company and others, presidents, ADs, recovered and found the incoming four. Do you feel like right now with what's going forward, yes, TV negotiations, revenue negotiations are critical, but do you feel like right now that going forward the Big 12 is as close with parity among everyone than it's ever been since you've been around?
Well, I will say, and we in our meetings earlier this week when we were interviewing finalists and the new four schools were there, OU and Texas were there and participated fully in the process as well. There was just a tremendous sense of collaboration and positivity about the conference and where we're going. And I absolutely believe that as we move forward and with the kind of the 12 schools that will ultimately be the conference, there's a great deal of willingness to collaborate, work together, recognizing that that's the way we're going to be strongest as a conference, and probably in ways that it may be hard for other conferences to do because I think there is going to be a tremendous amount of parity, and there's a great deal of respect across the conference for each other and for what we each bring. Both some things are very similar and also some qualities that are quite different in the schools. So everybody's excited about it. The athletic directors, the presidents and chancellors feel really good about where we are and where we're going, and just the willingness of the schools to work together to do what's best for the conference.
The SEC always has been, it seems to me, even with them having some mega powers, blue bloods, whatever you want to call them, logos, that they understand the conference is only as strong as the weakest link. I never got that impression with the Big 12. Not that there's a weakest link, because everybody has their strengths. Do you feel like that's going to be the personality of the new Big 12?
Well, I absolutely believe that we all recognize the tremendous value of every single school in the conference, and they do. You're absolutely right. We each bring different things to the table, and I think that leads to a really strong conference overall. And I do believe there's a great deal of respect among the schools in the conference, and understand the unique value of each of those schools to helping us to be the strongest conference we can be going forward. So I'm excited about it. Everybody, it was just a great sense among everyone this week when we were all together, and really looking forward to moving forward together.
Thank you for your time. I know you're trying to just get away and decompress yourself. Thank you for your time, Dr. Livingstone. Appreciate you.
Hey, happy to be with you. Anytime I can be helpful, always glad to meet with you, David.
We're now joined in studio by Baylor linebacker Josh White, transfer from LSU, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports, Paul Catalina and David Smoke. So right now is the beat-down heat of summer. Workouts, I mean, you guys are in world-class shape, but you never are ready for whatever you deal with every day, are you?
Yeah, right. I mean, we come in, it's hot, but I mean, it's hard work because, we're going to be playing in it. So I feel like the work we do outside is going to pay off when come game time, really. So I love it.
For you personally, because you had to deal with some injuries and now you're back at it full speed, right. How did it feel to get, I mean, even doing stuff you don't like, right. Does it feel to be like yourself again and doing those drills?
Man, I feel happy. Like every day I wake up, because I know how it feels for it to be like stripped from you, like a season being stripped from you from an injury. So I don't take it for granted. I wake up every day with a smile. Even though I'm feeling sore, I still go out there with a smile because, man, when it gets taken from you, it hurts. So I go out there and just do all I can do with a smile.
How much did you miss the game?
So when I had tore my labrum, I had missed the whole season. Last season, I missed the whole season.
No, how much did you miss playing? What was that like?
Oh man, man, when they told me I had when I had tore my labrum, I had broke down in tears, man, because like I felt like that season was gonna be like my season because I had worked hard. I was in my playbook, and just one play stripped it from me. So man, it hit home. It really hit home. But I mean, I went by my treatment. I did my treatment like every single day. I was in there working hard. So I feel like my bounce back, that really helped my bounce back, like my mental, because I went in there hard every day, in the training room every day, while everybody else was lifting weights and practicing. I was in the training room lifting hard. So.
What is it like to make the decision to transfer? Because recruiting is a long process. It's right. I mean, you coaches coming at you from every angle, and you having to kind of filter through all that, and what's kind of real, what's kind of imagined, what's best for you. Right. But when you make the decision to transfer and kind of do it all over again, what is that process like? Emotionally to go through and think, okay, I've got to make another big jump in my life.
Right. Yeah. It's a stressful process. I mean, because it's not only affecting you, I should say, it's affecting your family too, because everybody else got to move around and everybody else got to come to the games. But I just feel like it's a point in your life where you got to be selfish and you got to do what's best for you. And I felt like what's best for me was like moving on and like going to a new school, and ultimately going to somebody like I trust that can develop me. And I was here.
Sometimes people can get an impression or get the feeling that somebody's probably going to be available, but they can't contact you until you're truly in the transfer portal. But as soon as your name's in the transfer portal, can you describe how many texts, calls, how does that work? And was it just one after another?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was one after another. And so as soon as I put my name in the portal, because they can't contact you as soon as you put your name in the portal, because it has to get, like, processed and stuff. But once your name in there, man, it get crazy.
Is it anything like the initial of when you were at Cypress Creek? Is completely like 100% faster, more?
I feel like it's more faster because everybody got your number already. Because my number ain't changed since I was in high school, so all the coaches really already have my number and everything. So as soon as I put my name in that portal, numbers, everybody was blowing me up, texting me, and not even coaches. I mean, family and friends were like, "Oh," because I didn't really tell anybody but my like immediate family that I was going to the portal. So once I did it, everybody was like surprised and stuff.
Well, you had their numbers too, right? Some of those coaches' numbers.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you had Coach Aranda's number. How does that work?
So I get I feel like some of the other coaches will like give me the phone to Coach Aranda because I don't think you can like actually like talk to the head coach at that time.
Sure.
So they would like give me the phone to Coach Aranda and like talk with him and stuff like that.
So, but you had a connection going back to your LSU recruitment with him.
Right.
How much did, just kind of rekindling that, like make it easier because you could go back and go, okay, this guy, I know him. I know what he does. You went to LSU thinking you were going to play for him for longer too.
Right. Yeah. I feel like it was a big trust thing. I know what he can do. I know the players he developed. Like even when I was at LSU, I was behind Damone Clark, and he basically developed Damone Clark too. So just seeing how Damone was developed by Coach Aranda wanted me really to play for him even more.
So the first time you ever met him as the defensive coordinator at LSU, what were your thoughts about him? Because he's unique.
Right.
How did you get to know him? And it's not all about just football with him.
Right. I feel like he was a real caring man. Like even with my mom, he would talk to my mom and my family, and he's just smart. He's just smart, like football smart. Not even football smart, just smart. A smart man in general. So I feel like talking to him is like I kind of like want to get my notepad. You know what I mean? And just soak it all in because like you don't really meet too many people like that. So that's how I feel about it.
I would think that when he's talking to family members, like he can sit down and talk to you and get into X's and O's and what he wants to do and this and that, and you go, oh man, that sounds really great. But when he's talking to your mom or somebody like that, his philosophical, just the way he is with people, would kind of jump off the page of like just interest in their lives.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember even back on my official visit, it's just how he talked to my mom and my family. He just gave them like examples of like stuff that happened in his life. And stuff, how he would basically, me coming here, he would turn me into like a better player, not a better player, but a better man too. So just my mom hearing that made her feel better about the process.
Has he given you like a book to read, anything like that? Or like does he bring up, because he's always bringing up, he likes to do children's books, which is kind of weird, like that kind of Ted Lasso stuff.
Right. I can't remember, but on my official visit, he brought up movies. Like we're in his office and we're talking about movies. And every movie he brought up, like ultimately came together and gave us like a story, like a really backstory about it. Like he really dives deep into it and like deep into like what the movie like mean and like the message that the movie is trying to get across that other people might like look over. You know what I mean? So it was really interesting to see how he like looked at the movie.
He dug into some books, like children's books at times last year, and it was like and then you realized it made sense. That's well, there's a click. There is obviously when you were at LSU or when you moved to LA, they're coming off a national championship,
right?
And Baylor was going through a tough time in 2020 with COVID at 2-7. Did you pay much attention to them last year during the season that they were having the kind of year they were having?
Not really, just because what I was going through, my labrum and stuff. So I was really just kind of focused on like getting bounced back and like what I'm gonna do to get better during the time. Because when you get an injury, I feel like everybody else is getting better and I'm sitting here injured. So I have to kind of like get into a mindset where like, what am I gonna do to get better while everybody else is out there working? You know what I mean? So I was just at that time I was just kind of focused on like getting better.
Kind of like one of those nightmares you have sometimes. You're running, but everyone else is passing you by.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. I don't like that feeling either. So,
That's why it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're not Josh White, the linebacker, what do we need to know about you? Like, what do people not know that would be kind of unique and cool about you?
I love fishing.
Really?
I love fishing for sure. I love fishing, and I feel like my getaway from football would probably be fishing. And I love to go to the movies. Like I don't care if it's by myself or with friends or with family. I just love movies.
All right, I have a couple follow-ups on that. Before we get into fishing, what's the best couple of movies you've seen in the last few months?
That Top Gun movie was
That
Top Gun movie was
I don't go to theaters. Paul's a movie aficionado, and we've gone to a couple of we've seen The Equalizer and a couple other ones. But that one there made me realize I probably need to go more often. And that's blowing up on the sales and all that. That was incredible.
I was at the edge of my seat in the movie theater the whole time. I was like, it was crazy.
Yeah. Now, are you a fan of the original Top Gun, or did you?
I watched it like a long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. What would your call sign be if you were a pilot?
Let's go with White the Strike.
All right.
White the Strike.
Yeah, that's one. What's another one that you've seen recently? Because that's the blockbuster of the summer. Right
Yeah.
Like my call sign, what I would go by?
No. What's your other movies?
Is there another movie?
Oh, another movie that I'd like to see. Another movie. I like all of the. Oh man, why is this?
Are you into like the Marvel movies or anything like that?
Oh yeah,
or?
I love Marvel movies too. Yeah,
Okay.
I love Marvel movies.
Okay, who's the GOAT Marvel movie? What's the one?
The one?
Yeah, or do you have is it all the Avengers? Or do you have one that you like? That's my dude right there.
He ain't the strongest. Now he ain't the strongest, but I love the Hulk. Like even like the original, like the Hulk movie, the original Hulk movie.
Yeah,
yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah.
You ever look like that after a big workout and weights? You kind of get pumped up on
sure.
it. Yeah. You come from a place that has a tradition at linebacker with what LSU has had, obviously with White and Patrick Queen, among some others as well. And you're coming to a place with what they had last year.
Right.
Some studs, guys in the NFL right now, and those who were there as well. How much does that matter that they've had success at that specific position here at Baylor?
I feel like with the success goes back to the coaching, I feel like the practice you put in with the coaches and the game plan, and it's also the stuff you do by yourself, like watching film and getting in one-on-one with coaches. Just that makes it push more. You know what I mean? Like he said a question again.
No, LSU has a tradition of linebackers, and one of the reasons you went there was your relationship with Coach Aranda, but they also are a great program. But they have linebackers that have been good. How much did that come into your decision, and did you know about what Baylor's done and created with Ron Roberts and Coach Aranda at the linebacker position, Terrell Bernard among some others?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Those guys, like with Patrick Queen and Terrell Bernard, those guys, they fit into the system. You know what I mean? Like fast, talented linebackers that react. So me coming out of high school, I feel like I had all those abilities, and I seen how Coach Roberts and Coach Aranda uses like their fast linebackers, and I felt like I could do that.
So you feel like you're in that kind of that category of fast playmakers. Like who's your GOAT fast linebacker?
Fast linebacker?
Yeah.
Devin White, for sure.
Devin White. Okay, of course, that's Alice. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
He won a ring, 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They cat fast.
Yeah. And then the linebacker position's kind of changed over the years, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so it is more about guys like Devin White than it is.
Not even the height wise too, because back then you wanted the real tall linebackers. Now these days, like if you're 6 foot, you're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You were recruited very heavily. Obviously, Oklahoma State, I think, was a part of it early, and then where you are now. Is it fun to be recruited, or is it annoying?
I would say.
Good to be liked, right?
Yeah, it could be liked. Are you talking about coming out of high school
or just in general?
Yeah, either one. You kind of talked about the differences between the high school recruitment and also after you get the transfer portal. But what's it like to be wanted? And yet again, I would think that it could be annoying at times.
Yeah, for sure. Like in high school, I mean, because my first offer was Baylor, and I remember when I got my first offer, I was after school I was lifting weights, and my head coach had called me in his office, and I got on the phone with a coach, and he told me that I would I think Evan Cooper. Do y'all remember him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Evan Cooper
good dude, man.
Yeah, Evan Cooper called me. He was like, "I just want to let you know you got a full scholarship offer from Baylor," and I was so excited. I called my mom. I called everybody, and I just feel like coming like in my high school mindset. I'm like, man, all this hard work paid off. You know what I mean? So every time. It wouldn't be annoying in high school because I'm like, man, that's what I work for. You know what I mean? And then when I felt like in college, that aspect is just like it kind of got annoying in college. You know,
more of a business type.
More of a business, and me, I already knew what I wanted to do, and I already knew what schools I wanted to see, and just like other schools like out of state like contacting me, kind of kind of does get annoying and tedious, I should say.
So you wanted to be back in Texas?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you missed that soil. You will probably miss the fishing, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, they got some in Louisiana.
Yeah, that's right. It's different. Yeah.
Tough question here, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if Dave Aranda was still the defensive coach at LSU, would you have left?
If he would have stayed,
yes.
Yeah, I would have stayed for sure.
Yeah. So that's there's the pipeline right there.
Yeah.
What was the first thing he said to you once he could talk to you after you entered the transfer portal? You mentioned he talks about everything sometimes besides football, but was there? He knew, right? He knew that he just had to make sure he took the call, or vice versa.
Yeah. So one of the things I took away from that first conversation is he was like, he told me that he's a fan. He's a fan of me, and he told me he was a fan of mine, and he was like, he didn't keep in contact with me, but he had eyes on me basically through my whole process. And before even offering me, he contacted people. He contacted people about me, like that stayed at LSU, and they told him like I good character, I always show up to work. And he was like, that's the person like I recruited, and I feel like you still that person. So yeah, that hit home.
How much does the personality of a player have to at least not match the personality of a coach? Because teams need to be a melting pot of different people,
right.
But at least, for you, like to match to understand what a coach is putting out.
Yeah, I just feel like you gotta, everybody, everybody's different, but everybody gotta just believe in the process and believe in the head coaching process. And once you believe in that, everything else falls in the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's probably not a lot of, when you have that, like a lot of eye rolling of like,
yeah,
what are we doing today? Like you might be like, oh man, I don't want to push this weight around this field today.
Right.
But there's not a lot of, I don't get why there's probably not a lot of wasted time, right?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. There's not a lot of wasted time at all. And I feel like those days when you do get up and you're like, those are the days where you should like push. You know what I mean?
Those are the ones. That's when you test yourself.
Yeah, you know
like,
what I mean?
No, but you got Siaka Ika. You saw him at LSU, right? He was kind of another guy that was ready to move on, and he was a monster for what Baylor did last year.
Right.
What did you see with him at LSU, and how much have you guys had a chance to communicate since you've arrived on campus?
We communicate somewhat, but when I was at LSU, he kind of left when I first kind of got there because I was a freshman, and he was leaving kind of when I got there. But here now, you know what I mean, me and him talk a lot. Me and him do talk a lot. In a locker room, we would talk, and like sometimes we would like compare like workouts, how it was at LSU and how it is here, like the similarities and the differences and stuff like that.
He's a character now.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's fun to be around. He's fun to be around.
You can't go take him fishing anywhere on a boat because you I mean, you wouldn't have any room to be in the boat, right?
Shore fishing right there, right?
Yeah, the shore fishing or
shore fishing,
maybe on the pier.
Yeah. All right, now, I want to talk about fishing for a second. We actually just had a champion bass fisher.
Bassmaster Classic champion.
Yeah, Jay Ellis on the show the other day. They have a big event coming up this weekend. But what is your favorite kind of fishing to do? Bass?
Yeah, bass,
okay.
for sure.
What's the biggest bass you've ever caught?
Biggest bass, I would say probably a 5.
Okay, that's a good size fish.
Because I never really went out like on a boat like to go fishing. Like back home, I would like always like get in my car, get a pole, and like drive around and find like little ponds that you wouldn't even like realize that there's fish in there.
It's not, you don't do that in 25 minutes to drive, but it's an experience of patience.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything you can relate with the patience of fishing to playing football?
I feel like patience has a lot to do with football. You know what I mean? I mean, it's good to be fast. I feel like at certain times you should be fast, and at certain times you should be patient. You know what I mean? And I feel like you can kind of say that with fishing too. That at certain times you should be fast, and certain times you should be patient. So I feel like those do correlate a little bit.
Is there any relationship or correlation to boom? When it hits, and like making a perfect, flawless tackle where you don't even feel it.
Yeah, because when you fishing, they snap on. If you go up too fast, it'll pop out their mouth. But I feel like once you get the hang of it, and just like tackling, once you get the hang of it, it's all natural. You know what I mean?
That feeling, and I grew up fishing a lot with my dad. When the nervousness, when the cork goes under the water,
right,
and you have to count, like you have to wait a second But like you said, that pop.
Yeah.
That's the moment where you got to the patience you're
Game
talking
time.
about.
Yeah.
Like, all right, okay, now.
Yep.
Yeah. But there is no worse feeling than thinking you've got one, and then that hook flying back out of the
man.
water. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
What moment in your life has tested you the most personally?
Tested me the most. I feel, honestly, I keep on going back to this, but I feel like that injury, that was my first like huge injury that put me like really out of football. Cause in high school, I always had like fingers and you can always wrap that up and stuff. But that injury like put me out, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't work out. I couldn't do anything. And I feel like that just tested me.
How did you get through it?
Lots of talks with my mom and my family, they kept me going through that whole process. Actually, they were just telling me like, you got this. It's just a bump in the road. Like you got your whole life. It's just a bump in the road. Stay true to who you are, and just attack the training room. You know what I'm saying?
And the tedious physical therapy. Did you have one of those things where you had the cushion? Like I had a rotator cuff injury.
Man, I hated that thing. I mean, I couldn't do nothing. Oh
my goodness!
Couldn't do nothing.
Yeah, you couldn't play a video game. You can't fish. You can't. I mean, nothing.
You can't even. I couldn't even lay down on my back.
No, I slept in a recliner.
I had to sleep like this. Yeah. I had to sleep like this. Yeah.
That's a pain in the butt.
Man, tell me about it.
How has Baylor treated you since you've arrived? It's been, you've been around not very long, but what's it been like?
Oh man, it's been. I love it here. I love it here, and it's really just like I feel like the differences from like coming from LSU and come here is a brotherhood. These guys when I came in, they could have did anything, but they brought me in like one of them. Like I came in, I introduced myself, and it was all like laughs and giggles. Like I've been here for like 3 years already. You know what I mean? So it's just the relationships that I'm building with people here is just second to none. I love it.
All right, your mom sounds to me like she's your go-to. Like when you need advice, she's the number one. She's your go-to. What kind of a fan is she in the stands? Is she nervous, quiet? Is she loud and crazy? What is she like? Do you even know?
Oh no, I know.
Okay.
Yeah. She, I feel like she's quiet. She's quiet, but when I make a play, she can get crazy. But I mean, my mom knows and loves football too, and I feel like I'm confident. I'm confident, and she's also confident in me. So I feel like that's where her like quietness and chill vibes get, because she's like, I know he can do it. So
well, now will she like if you miss a tackle? Will she say, "Listen, here's what you should have done," or is she not that way?
She would be like, I mean, it's always laughter. She'd be like, I remember like coming home from like high school games, I'll miss a tackle. She'd be like, I seen you miss that tackle. Like, what's going on? You talk to me. You talk to me about something. And
can you hear her voice? I mean, even if she's yelling, screaming, excited, or whatever, can you hear her voice through? If there was 10,000 fans at a sight crease, I'm sure you had more than that at times.
Yeah,
you can hear it, right?
Oh yeah.
What do you want to be remembered by or as once you are done at Baylor?
Well, obviously football comes with it, but I want to be remembered as somebody that has good character, good accountability, like on and off the field. A person that a loving and caring person, and a person just goes to work. You know what I mean? And just
absolutely.
Yeah.
That sounds like a Dave Aranda Baylor type football player. That's kind of what he demands and what he wants as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like the big thing is the character. You know what I mean? Like character, you can't just be like, how can I put this? Character, you have to keep on doing it. You can't just be like, show a good character one day, bad character this day. It's all about like consistency with the character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't just say you're a leader.
Exactly.
You have to lead.
You got to be that.
Isn't there something, I don't know, I don't remember it because I'm not good about remembering, but it's characters who you are when no one's watching?
Yep. Like if you're the last one out the locker room and you see trash on the floor, going to pick it up. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's doing stuff that when nobody's watching, you putting in work and you doing that stuff.
So when you didn't do that, or when you were younger and you might not have done what Mama said she wanted you to do, what was that like?
Oh man, my mom got at me because I come from a single parent household. So my mom is basically my dad and my mom. You know what I mean? And she also worked a lot. So she worked 2 jobs. So she had to be like more like on me and more strict. And yeah, I mean, I got like crazy stories of her like. when I was in middle school, I played for 2 teams. I played for my middle school team, and I played for a thing called Sock Creek Cowboys. So Sock Creek Cowboys, we would practice right outside. We would basically practice on the same field as I practiced at Blau. So I would go home. I would practice, do the Blau practice, and I would go home, and then I would get dropped off back at Blau, the middle school, to practice for Sock Creek Cowboys. And my mom would work her second job at Matsky Elementary, which is right across the street from Blau. So I would practice, and I would get out of practice at I would say 7. But my mom doesn't get off work from Matsky till 12 o'clock. So I would practice there, and I would go across the street to Matsky, and I would sleep in a teacher's room for 12 o'clock.
While she was working, making money, putting food on the table.
Yeah, I was in there asleep.
No wonder you guys are so tight.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
it's fun. It was also fun. You know what I mean? Nobody's in the school. It's an empty school, and I just be in there chilling and sleeping, waiting for her to get off to work with her.
When somebody does all of that to sacrifice what maybe she wanted to do some things, but she does it for the children.
Right.
What is that like?
Man, I love her with all my heart. You know what I mean? I should say when I see her waking up early in the morning and coming in late, I feel like that basically shows when I come here at Baylor and I got to put in the hard work. I'm like, man, if my mom waking up early in the morning and getting home at 12 o'clock at night, I can come out here and do this. You know what I'm saying? I can come out here and do this for her and retire really, because she's been working hard. She's a hard-working lady.
Is that your goal to one day?
Oh yeah,
that's
the first thing I'm gonna do.
Have you ever said that to her?
No, this would be a surprise.
Well, not if she watches it.
I'm pretty sure she knows.
Yeah,
that's
she
what I
knows.
want to do.
Yeah,
that's gonna be the first thing I do. I'm gonna retire my mom for sure.
That's awesome, man.
For sure.
Second thing, going on a big fishing trip.
Yeah,
yeah.
Do we have that picture of the guy with the 9.5-pound bass? Garrett's in the system. We had a guy the other day sent us from up in Pennsylvania, a 9.5-pound bass.
Dang.
Yeah, it was only almost as big as his arm was inside half of it. Just it wasn't he caught it on
huh?
Yeah, it wasn't like he went down there with all the wrap around it. What do they call that when you
noodling?
No, It wasn't that. He really caught it somewhere up in Pennsylvania.
I think I seen a picture of that on Twitter.
Oh my God. Yeah, there's some that are monstrous.
Yeah.
Man, you seem like you're happy.
Oh yeah, I'm happy. I'm up I gained some weight on here. I gained some weight, gained some good weight. So yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, don't gain the bad stuff.
No, the bad stuff, you gotta stay away from that.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your time.
Oh, for sure.
What do you want to tell Baylor Nation?
Baylor Nation, I just want to let y'all know that we working. You know what I mean? We working early in the morning, late at night, and I can't wait till the season to show y'all what we got.
Josh White, again, Baylor linebacker with us from Cypress Creek High School in the Houston area. Paul Catalina, David Smoke, Sikkim 365 Radio. And Phil Bennett segments are always just electrifying, and especially when we bring him in after we just spoke to his favorite player ever, Ahmad Dixon. My goodness, how you doing, Coach?
I'm good, Smokey. Good.
Craig and Paul, David Smoke, Phil Bennett, North Texas defensive coordinator. He brought up the Oklahoma game. Getting the crowd.
Hey, when he became a cheerleader?
Yep, that's exactly what he brought up.
When he became a cheerleader who got chewed out at midfield.
Coach, he wanted to know why he got chewed out at midfield rather than on the sidelines. I think is kind of how he put it, yeah.
Hey, I think I was probably about – I was guaranteed I was out of the coach's box. And I told him the next day, I looked at the tape, I said, you better go hug K.J. Morton. I said, he saved your ass. He made a great play on that big, I think Bell was his name.
Yep.
Blake Bell, yep.
Oh, my God. All right, I've got to start off with this. You had a linebacker, a really good one, enter the transfer portal recently, and all of a sudden he's still coming back. What is that like? Now we're talking, May 1st was supposed to meant something. Now it basically means nothing, and then you're fighting for a guy in the middle to late June. What is that like to deal with?
Well, first of all, he's an unbelievable kid. And you and I have talked about this, Smokey. I mean, it's crazy times. And he and I discussed it throughout the spring, and and I told him, I said, whatever you want to do, I'm going to be with you. But I said, there's certain things I want you to consider. And then, he went, he looked at some things, and I don't want to speak for KD, but in the end, as he told me, he said, Coach, I'm just, I didn't find what I thought I'd find, and I'm comfortable, and I think you can help me get where I want to get. And so, it played out, for us on the good part. And I told him, I said, listen, I didn't berate him or anything about I said, you just got to look and you got to see and you got to go with your heart. I said, the only thing I ask you and what I do all my players, I want you to be totally in. I want you to be totally committed, because I do. I think we can have an impactful year at North Texas, and he would be will be a huge part of it.
Phil, one of the things that we don't get a lot of perspective on is because I do think if you ask most coaches, they are for almost everything that's going on in the essence of it, the rule of it, of NIL and the transfer portal and giving players that freedom. But you guys have been given no time to adapt to it and a change of something you've been doing 40, 50 years for some guys, a long time, and doing it one way. What's it like to have to adapt on the fly with no guidance and trying to, shift down from what you were used to for the majority of your adult life?
Well, I would be lying if I said it wasn't. It's been a major adjustment. Because the rules, nothing's really defined. You talk about NIL. The intent of the NIL, I mean, let's be honest, guys, that's BS. It's inducements. That's what it is. And you had people, we had this kid, and I'm not a crybaby. I knew what was going on. We had people calling him or doing the Twitter, hitting him up, having other third parties hitting him up. If it's NIL, I think a lot of coaches say, you know what, they deserve more. But the inducement part, that what's going on, I was with R.C. Slocum last night, and he had showed me a text he had sent to a major player in all this. And he said, and he's true, he said, I don't think we'll ever see the game we once knew and loved. And unfortunately, I do believe this. I believe with the calendar, and I believe with the NCAA getting new direction, that we can get this thing under control. I'm an optimist on that, because right now it's out of control, but it is fixable. I'm not one of those guys. I saw where Mike Gundy said, hey, it's going to be this way. I don't think that's true. I've done it too long. Yeah, I think we're smart enough, and with the help of some other people, the conference commissioners, and I believe we can get this thing where everybody's happy, but also, regulated.
When KD Davis told you that he was backing out of the transfer portal, was that almost like receiving a 5-star commitment in a way?
You know what? My heart, my 67-year-old heart, when it was over, he had texted me, and I didn't want to be involved in him looking at A&M and Ole Miss
Sure.
and Texas. I just wanted him. I said, you see what you see, and then get back with me. And he actually, this is crazy, he actually called one of our staffers and said, listen, I've texted Coach Bennett a couple of times. He haven't texted me back. Would you ask him if I call him, he will accept the call? and the truth of the matter is, I didn't see the text. And when he called me, him and his mother were on the phone, and I said, let's stop right here. I said, what you're telling me is you want to come back. He said, yes, sir. I said, I'd love to have you. I said, the only thing I ask, once again, I want you to be all in. I said, I want the guy that when I came here a year ago, I said to myself, this guy could play on any defense I've ever coached, which he could. I promise you, he would have been the best player on defense at any school he went to. He is that good a player, and he is that good a kid. And, he went with his heart, and we're going to take it from there and see what happens. But yes, I was fluttered a little bit, Paul.
You know what, Phil, you have also seen, and how much, and we had Chris Humber from 247 Sports on yesterday, and he said he was in the office with Seth Luttrell doing a story, and he said it's pretty intimidating because Seth's a pretty big boy, and he was talking about the transfer portal and tampering, and he was mad. Seth was mad. We know what's going on. It probably was going on 15 or 20 years ago. Is there anything that people can do with a player getting a text or is there anything that could ever be done to stop it?
Well, I like to think this, coaching it's a professional career. And I think the most important thing that we all have is our integrity. And if a kid calls you I've had kids call me out of the blue. I said, "Are you in the portal?" And they said, "No, I can't talk to you. Cut it off." But the thing that blatant third party illegal contact, that's cheating, Smoke. You don't want to be a part of that. And I know everybody's trying to impress and everybody's trying to get the better players. But yeah, I think you can enforce that. Just like I think you can enforce the inducements instead of the NIL thing. But it's going to take, like I said, right now, let's be honest. You remember the situation with Baylor. It took them 4 years to come down with a conclusion. I mean, right now, the NCAA is not in a good place in the enforcement aspect right now, unfortunately.
Let me ask you this. Do you see any comparison of what you're dealing with now to what happened when Art was fired and you had the class that had signed and got rated?
It's funny you say that. Randy Clements and I said, have we ever made more calls to our own players? And I said, yeah, we have. I said, take 2016, we did.
Yeah.
And it was, they were free to go. And very similar. But the thing that was different is, and I say this again, is the calendar. Once we knew we got them in, once they started summer school and we got, then you're gone. And one of the things they've got to do here, and I think Paul might have said it or Craig, but I'm for giving a kid a one-time transfer. I think it's fair. But I think it's fair for the players. I think it's fair for the coaches. But I think the calendar on how you don't need to be getting into July trying to build your roster or keep your roster. Now, obviously, being a mid-major and having a player that's really a good player, we knew there were possibilities that could happen, and we knew it was going on, and we were just doing our best to try to to give him the reasons. He's built the legacy at North Texas. He's everybody there loves him because not just as a football player, he's a wonderful man, and but we knew it. So yeah, I think the calendar has got to be fixed.
Well, and also, I think one of the things I've seen, Coach, is that you get these tiers of where Alabama and Ohio State can kind of pick from the tier of the Power 5 below them, and then it goes on down. So how are schools supposed to get better if, you're, in the summertime, you're in the dead period or whatever, you're all fishing or golfing, and then all of a sudden you get a call and saying, hey, your three best players are leaving. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, it's chaos.
Hey. You know what? Like I told you, I mean, when I got that, I mean, this thing literally, guys, went from Thursday morning, Coach, I think I'm going in the portal, to Monday afternoon. I mean, it was a gamut of emotions. My wife was telling me, she said, God almighty, what a weekend. But, you have to, right now, being with what it is, if you're going to be involved in it, you've got to go with the flow. And, you mentioned earlier, Seth, we knew some of the people were working some of our kids, and Seth actually confronted a few of them. And we felt like if we didn't do that, then we were just exposing our players for it happening all the time.
Well, I'm going to ask you then, and I know you can't give us too much of that. I was going to ask you if you've ever done that where you picked the phone up even back wherever you were and said, hey, that's wrong. What happens to the other end of the phone when Seth Luttrell or you or whoever confronts somebody that knows that they've done it? Do they just act like I don't know what you're talking about?
Well, you know me well enough, David. I'm not I'm confrontation. Some people feel confrontation is bad. I feel it's a resolving thing. I think a lot of things can come out of confrontation. And I've done it before where something's happened and I called them and said, hey, I know for a fact this transpired. Now, most of them say, you know what, I'll find out. And, anytime you handle it like a man and it's truthful, and I don't threaten them or any of that stuff, but I know what to be. I wouldn't call them if I knew it wasn't to be true. And I think Seth did that. And I think that now one thing, one of the schools continued. So, it is what it is. And you're always going to have those people that think the rules don't apply to them. And with just the way the variance of everything, you could, May the 1st was the date, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a grad transfer, you can do it anytime. So there was a lot of different things going on that people said, and you could get exceptions. So, I just, I'm hoping with whether it's reorganization or I'm hoping, and I have a feeling it's going to have to come from the conferences and American Football Coaches Association, that we can get this calendar down and get this NIL deal where it's fair to a lot of people.
How many times have you been tempted when you've had somebody rated from your roster and now you've got to fill that roster where you start looking around and you got to wait for somebody to enter the transfer portal? Is it also tempting on your part?
Absolutely. But here's our situation. We have had a bunch of kids. It's sort of the pecking order. The Power Fives take some of our guys. Hey, I've taken 2 Division II players who I think are going to be big time players. I always laugh. Eddie Lackey was at a Division III school before he went to Riverside, and Dave Aranda will tell you this. Dave Aranda and myself were the only 2 guys that offered Eddie Lackey a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And there has never been a linebacker any better at Baylor in the history. There's been some as good, but any better. Taylor Young, us and UL Monroe. So my point is evaluation and kids get bigger. Like we took a kid from Eastern New Mexico. He's out of Burleson. He was an All-American at Eastern New Mexico. He was 6 foot tall, 210 pounds out of high school. He's 6'3", 245, runs 4.5 now. Led the Division II programs in sacks. He's a difference maker. What he is, he's a Chris McAllister. That's what he is.
Wow.
Your team closed on quite a run last year. Five wins to end the season after struggling. How much do you feel that momentum building? Like you said earlier, you feel like you got something really good there this year. That momentum from the end of the year rolling through.
Well, Paul, you feel good when you win, but you also have to be realistic. There's a reason UTSA is picked to win the conference, because they proved last year that they could win consistently from start to finish. We've got to prove that. We feel like we can. We had some, and you can say a lot of different things. I was being new and this and that. But I know this as a defense, and I can speak more for the defense. I saw us progress and grow. I was able to tweak and start just like we did at Baylor. Hey, this kid can do this. He can't do that. You find more. And I thought we did a better job with our personnel. I think we have that same ability to grow, and offensively, we've got our quarterback back. We also have Greg Donnell. We have a Stone Earl from ACU, so we have some options there. We lost Oscar Attaway, who we thought was a freshman All-American the year before during training camp. He's back. And then we had 3 guys come on and do a really good job. So there's going to be opportunity there for North Texas. And I like the fact we're not big talkers, but we're pretty good workers.
Phil, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. I think you could I mentioned this, if we wanted to talk about watering the flowers, that you would be just as passionate about that?
You know, I'm going to tell you, I told somebody the other day, they said, Bennett, how much longer? I said, listen, I'm having as much fun right now that I've had anywhere. I mean, and that's one of the things I mentioned to KD. I said, KD, it's not the different level. I mean, Smoke, y'all think about where I've been. I mean, I've had people dream to have the jobs that I've been blessed with. And I'm having as much fun at North Texas as I've ever had because it's about the people. These kids believe in what we're doing. I'm with Jim Gush, who's my lifelong assistant. I've got my son-in-law, my son. I've got Jared Holly. I've got my 3 grandbabies. So, and we've got a lot to prove. I'm determined. I mean, I feel very, very fortunate.
For someone who's been everywhere and coached as long as you have, you still learn something, right? Is it
every day? Yeah, every day. I tell their coaches this, and they laugh at me because I said, well, I remember back in 1982, I've been in 1978, we did this, and they're looking at me, God, Coach, I was born in 90. What are you talking about? But anyway, one of the things I told them, I said, when I quit learning, and I think too, one of the things, and you and I talked about this, people ask me, what was your best year at Baylor? The thing that I've said this over and over again, when we went there in 11, we weren't great, but we pieced it together. We got a lot of turnovers, and we could get the ball to Art, the offense, and we won 10 games. The next year we start good, we lose my kicks. We go down the line. We're losing people, and we have I think you can correct me. I think it was a 4 or 5 game losing streak.
Yep.
And then my kicks was the key. He comes back, and all of a sudden we go on a roll. And you don't even remember this, but we tear UCLA up in the bowl game, and you get me off of the bus.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Absolutely. I was right up outside the tunnel. Yeah.
Yeah. And you get me off the bus, and I tell you, I said, we will win the conference next year. And I said, we have come of age. And that's the thing, with coaching. And you saw it this year. And, Jeff Grimes brought his son up to our camp. And I've loved Jeff forever when he was a GA for us at A&M. And I've just been so proud of him. And I was telling him that, but I told him, I said, I felt that. I watched them play. I felt that role that they got on. And I remember telling somebody, we were watching the championship game in the Texas Stadium in the AT&T, and I said, right now, I said they complimented each other. I mean, Ron did a good job on defense. Everybody was, and that's what we evolved to, and that's what makes the difference when you think and that's where I think maybe we could be right now.
That 2012 team, after RG3 with Nick Florence, you mentioned that. You had the crazy West Virginia game. Hicks was out. It was the Texas loss that was gut-wrenching, and you had a handful of those where you guys were better, although they, about the same time. But, it just, I can view and still remember certain moments of those games. And then how you beat Kansas State and all hell broke loose.
Yeah. And people don't realize we played Todd Monken, who's the offensive coordinator at Georgia, always tells me, he goes, y'all did the best job of anybody, because they were good on offense. And we had to beat them to go to the Holiday Bowl. Mm-hmm. And of course, Lake Sistrunk helped too, going 80 yards, about 70 of it with a pulled hamstring. But we were able to do things, and that's one of the things I was talking about learning. I mean, I learned that season. I said, we got to be different. We got to be different with Art's offense. We can't be a set and bend but don't break. And that sort of goes with your question, do you learn? Absolutely. And last year when we lost our top 3 receivers at SMU, one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about SMU. One of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and Mike, our offensive coordinator, is we were able to do things. And that's one of the things I loved about Seth and is that we were able to reinvent ourselves on offense. We knew we could run the ball. We were an average throwing team, and then we played what I call complementary football, which I thought the Bears did this year too.
I'm telling you, our chat room loves you. There were some that said, hey, thanks, please thank him for beating UCLA from this USC Trojans fan. And for those who don't know, our first year on the air, Coach Bennett was nice enough every Monday to come on our show like at 5 o'clock, and it was gold because you could help break down the week before football games, not just Baylor, but other things that were going on. And to think about where you've been, A&M, Purdue, LSU, TCU, Oklahoma,
K-State.
Yeah, K-State, Arizona State, Pittsburgh, and who you've coached under with RC and Snyder and obviously with Art and obviously Wanstead at Pittsburgh. It's phenomenal, man. We appreciate it.
It's been, trust me when I say this, I don't take it lightly. I've never had a bad job. I've absolutely been around wonderful people, never worked for anybody I did not like. And I feel very thankful, and I try to show that and say that because I mean it.
Well, we appreciate you, man. We really do. Thanks for your time, and I hope we can get you again so much. We love hearing your voice. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I love talking to you. By the way, my brother Jerry says to say hello to you.
Yep.
He said he's still, I told you this the other day, he still remembers because, he was so good with high school football in East Texas. And I told you, you guys are great for Baylor, and you're great for the not just for Baylor, but the local high schools there.
Thank you very much. Jerry Bennett,
all right, guys.
1986,
nice
won
coach.
the championship with Jefferson High School. Beat Cuero. They had a guy named Robert Strait, massive record-breaking running back who eventually played at Baylor and took care of them in the championship game at Kyle Field.
Now,
We're now joined by John Machota, theathletic.com, Cowboys in the NFL. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. John, thanks for your time. Paul?
John, you wrote the article about 15 things likely to happen. The Cowboys reach the Super Bowl as 15th. What has to happen for that to get to like 9th?
Oh, geez. Wow, that's a tough question. A lot of changes. I don't think for any team that hasn't been to a Super Bowl in 26 years that it would ever get to 9th until they finally get to a Super Bowl. I mean, let's say, for example, the 2017 Eagles that won the Super Bowl, I don't think anybody would have that even 9th on their 15 list going into that season. So they would have to get past any place that they've been in the last 26 years. It would have to be a season coming off of going to the NFC Championship game. And for example, let's say that was last year. I still wouldn't even have it any higher than probably 15 this year because of the fact that they lose Randy Gregory, they lose Lyle Collins, they lose Amari Cooper. It's not like the team, it's not like they're like the Rams where you're just kind of like, yeah, they lost some guys, but then they're also, reloading too. So, man, it'd be tough. I would love for that day to come because I think it'd be great for all the Cowboys fans out there to finally see that. But it doesn't appear to be on the horizon to me.
John, they do have a lot of turnover. Is it reasonable for fans to expect a transitional year, even in the NFC East, which at best the Eagles could make a run at if they got super hot?
Yeah, I mean and obviously the Cowboys would have to do like they did last year, where they stayed healthy, at least relatively healthy, and were in that spot, when they entered the playoffs. I think that. They're not going to. This roster isn't going to be able to take on many big time injuries, many key injuries, and overcome them. They need some great health for that to happen, and probably some good things to bounce their way as well. And they also probably don't need the Eagles to be much better than they've been. And with some of the moves the Eagles have made, you look at them and you're just kind of sitting there like, man, if they get better player at the quarterback position, that could be the favorite to win the division. So, and for the Cowboys. What this season feels like to me a little bit is a little bit of Jason Garrett's last year, where you're like, yeah, they're going to be good enough to make a playoff run. But if they don't, you kind of get the feeling, well, then they're going to be going in a different direction on the coaching staff. And if you do that, then there's going to be a lot of changes. Obviously you're still going to have Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons and things like that, but you're going to have some changes in the coaching staff. And generally when that happens, you have some philosophical changes. So We'll see. We'll see if this is really, Mike McCarthy continues to say how, they're building the program. Well, they're going to have to take another step forward in year 3 to see a year 4.
Let me ask you this, John, and I know no matter what he says or what he tries to say or cover whatever he has said before up, is there really any kind of a cloud around the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy because of the Sean Payton thing, or is that more media driven?
I think it's more media driven, and when I say that, it's because I find it's more interesting to us than it is to a lot of the players, where I don't know if it's just a change in times, and it's not just the NFL. I think it's a lot of sports in general, where you just don't get these guys that are with the same team for a long period of time. And so, yeah, of course, you're going to have your Dak Prescotts and some guys like that, where that they're going to be here and things like that. But a lot of these guys, they just, if there's a coaching change, there's a coaching change, and they just go on with it. I mean, just the days of just, I got drafted by the Packers, I'm going to be coached by this guy my entire career. Or I got drafted by the Cowboys, I'm going to be, coached by Tom Landry or Jimmy Johnson. And heck, Jimmy Johnson didn't even last that long. But outside of maybe, the Patriots, I guess Ravens, Steelers, there's probably a few others, but you generally think when you get drafted, you're probably going to have multiple head coaches coaching you. So, and if you get drafted by the Cowboys, I don't know why you think any different anyway, because they've gone through so many coaches over the years, really since Tom Landry. So I don't think that it affects the team as much as it's something for us to talk about when, 1, there's nothing going on, and 2, it doesn't appear like the team is really getting any closer to a Super Bowl. And when you have all the resources that the Cowboys have, and that's your goal every year to get the Super Bowl, if you're not getting there, then it's all of a sudden, well, okay, well then if they're not getting there, what needs to change? And you kind of start at the top, and you're just like, well, the owner's not going to change. That the way that is. So what's the next thing that can change at the highest level? And that's your head coach.
John, did you hear Miles Sanders the other day say he feels like they're an all-star team in Philly? And I mean, again, they got it's all hinging on Jalen Hurts. We know, but
famous last words.
Yeah, but that sounds famous. Yeah, like Craig said, famous last words there.
Yeah, that it worked for the Rams obviously this past year, but there was times in the past there where the Eagles went all in and did things, and they felt like they had that type of a situation, and it obviously didn't work out. I do think that they did a lot of great things to improve their roster, and I do think they're going to have a much better team. But again, it all comes down to the quarterback. It's like, and they're going to know more than I will what Jalen Hurts looks like. But the Jalen Hurts I saw last year, I think can be a solid quarterback. But to go where you're starting to talk about all-star teams and things like that, Jalen Hurts will be, it'll be one of those things where I won't even have to watch a game. If you tell me that things are going well for the Eagles, let's say, I can promise you I won't pay attention to one thing the Eagles are doing for the first 8 weeks of the season. And then you tell me that they're, 6-2 or 7-1. The very first thing I'm going to say to you is, wow, Jalen Hurts must be playing well. And it's obviously they've helped him out with the receivers they've put around him in the last couple of years. And their offensive line should be really good. There's the weapons are there, but I need to see it first, and if he is, and he has taken another step, well, yeah, the Cowboys are in trouble and the Eagles will probably win the division.
I was going to ask you this question, but we basically just dug right into it, is who improved themselves the most in the East, because we know the East has usually been maybe a one-hit wonder, and that's unfair because they've won Super Bowls, but one team or maybe another one's pretty good, and then the other two are awful. And it's been, I can't remember, can anyone remember the last time all 4 teams were at least competitive?
I really can't. The only thing I'll say is about today's, generation with parity. I would say that because of that, because of the parity, it's like you almost shouldn't be surprised. And because not one team is really pulled away in the division, you shouldn't really surprise if Washington comes out of nowhere and wins the division. The Giants, for me, would be the most unlikely. But I guess if everything clicked for them and they got hot at the right time, I guess that shouldn't surprise you either because of the parity in this division. But when you started that question, you asked about, which team improved themselves the most. The first thing I thought about was it's the Eagles. But I'm telling you right now, if I'm putting them in order of who improved the most this offseason out of those 4 teams, I don't think there's any questions the Cowboys are last. I don't think anybody would look at their team right now today compared to what it was last year and think, one, it's better by their standards. And you look at the other 3 teams, and I think they've all improved. Now, I think the Eagles are the only ones that have improved enough to where they could be in that Cowboys, with the Cowboys, is like I said, at first place to a high level. But the other two have certainly improved this offseason. They've made changes. They've done things, added in the draft, things like that you can see where that's definitely improved them. I look at this Cowboys team and where they sit today, and I don't think that they're any better than they were last year, and they might be worse than they were last year at this time.
Yeah, the Commanders, have a ton of questions off the field, obviously, and Carson Wentz is a bit of a roller coaster. But look, they've re-signed Terry McLaurin. They've done some things on the field that make you think that they're, especially draft wise, that they're going to be healthier and better. The Cowboys, are kind of hoping for addition by subtraction. The Giants are better just by hiring Brian Daboll and a new general manager. Before you even get into the personnel. So, yeah, the Cowboys are kind of in stasis, John.
They really are, and it surprises me because I thought that because they ended last year in a disappointing fashion that they felt like, well, they'll get past that by, improving this roster. And there really wasn't a lot of, adding pieces outside of, obviously there wasn't going to be a ton in free agency, but, I don't know. I just felt like at this point, there would have been some type of notable move made, whether it be a trade or some type of a signing or something that, you could take away. And even if it isn't something that we could sit here on this show and talk about, like, hey, this really improved them, it'd be something for at least Jerry to sell to the fan base. And I look at their offseason and I'm like, what does Jerry have to sell to the fan? He always wants something to sell to the fan base about why this season is going to be. I don't know what he says. And he's going to sit up there in about a month and at that opening press conference. He's going to talk about how this team is better than it was last year because he almost always says that. There's only 1 year I can remember in the last 10 of being out there where he was like, this is going to be an uphill battle, or I believe those are the words. So he's going to say that they're improved, and I just don't see it. And you'd have to have Tyler Smith come in as a rookie and be like as good as like a Tyron Smith. And you'd need Tyler Biadasz to like where we sit here and we're like, man, I can't believe how much he's improved at center. And then you'd need Terrence Steele to do the same thing. You'd need Tyron Smith to stay healthy for the full season. There's just a lot of ifs. You need those wide receivers in Tolbert in Washington to all of a sudden be like, wow, these guys are, man, they're really good starters. And we didn't really know what they had at this time, and that's just a lot of ifs.
Yep, it is, and that's what makes the NFC East so wacky. And the Cowboys, for the most part, have run it, but the Giants had their Super Bowls with Eli, and Philadelphia had theirs that came out of, you said, nowhere. You never know. Thank you, John. As always, enjoy your, hopefully, a little bit of an extended weekend, although being a Cowboys writer, there is no weekend. There is no off days and holidays, but have them if you can.
You too. Thanks for having me on.
John Machota with us, Sikkim 365 Radio, NFL Cowboys writer. Here is a picture. This is